Hello, my lovelies. Well, today I'm very pleased to say I've got Christine Hart, who has had an absolutely varied and full life. So, this is going to be an amazing hour. We've only got Christine for an hour. You could do literally 12 hours with Christine with the life she's led and the work she's done. But what I want you to do, Christine, you know yourself best. So, can you give the viewers an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, so I don't know what to call myself. I suppose psychic medium channeler. And I know probably lost half the audience as a lot of people don't believe that exists. I'm classified as a Sunday Times bestselling author of my book, Searching for Daddy, was about growing up in care and ending up working for the press, Murdoch's press. I know it's really unpopular. I certainly felt the evil when I was there, got sucked into that, and feel really that I didn't have much of a choice. So just to take listeners back to the beginning, I was born. No, I was dumped at the Crusade of Rescue, which is a Catholic um, children's home. I had a schoolgirl mother, and after she gave birth to me, she left me there. And then they tracked her down, and so that the Catholic Church was involved then, and priests, and they were Irish Catholic, and I was taken into care and lived in care until I was 4, adopted age 4, and taken to the Hart family. And my name was changed then to Christine Hart, which is now. And before that, my name was Tracy Sweeney. I did write in my book that it was Lucy, just because I didn't want any connection with my mother, who I had tracked down and just really didn't get on with very well. She accused me of being an imposter, of stealing her real daughter's details.
Oh,
So I
God.
just backed off, and I think she couldn't really handle the guilt of what happened to me. I told her. She still said that she believed that adoption was a good thing, even after I told her what had happened. So basically, I was um, passed to a couple who already had a boy. They were married cousins. He had grown up with her, yet he was 10 years older. So when she was 6, he was 16, and they knew each other at that time. The families are really close. And they married each other, first cousins, and they didn't have children. And the my father, Tommy, his sister was a nun in the Daughters of St. Paul. She was a senior nun, well respected, and she took over a lot of my care. I was a lot in the convent, which was in Langley, Daughters of St. Paul, still there. She's Kathleen Hart. She died, but I still know the sisters. I still go back and see them every now and again. The food is great there. It's always Italian, because the sisters are linked with Rome. They have convents all over. I was sent to a convent when I was 13 in Boston. I was supposed to become a nun, but ended up not returning. And my parents were really upset. And when I was younger, my adoptive father, took me to Dublin. He had a brother called John that was in a mental hospital in Dublin, St. Brendan's. He set fire to the home when he was younger. My father was very infantile, very immature, and my mother used to call him Daddy. And it was really, they didn't have sex. They made that very clear. And my father was a gold-plated pedophile. He sexually abused me from a young age, took me to Dublin. I slept in bed with him, acted more or less like a wife. Lost a lot of myself, lost a lot of my energy, soul loss around there, but didn't know what that was. And I was pretty shut down by the time I was about 13. I was good at school, grammar school, but my mother was violent to me. She used to whip the backs of my legs really hard. And so I found it hard to get on with other girls. But I did have friends and was really good at school. It was my escape. And then got to about age 13, and just something happened that I stopped being able to pay attention. I don't know what that was, but I started to fail. And then I got in with a wrong crowd. And
Can I just ask you something,
Mhm.
Christine? Just it's just something that went through my mind because for a very short period of time, I went to a convent school. What did you think? I mean, they have the nuns and they have state registered teachers. Was that the same in where you went? They had to have two state registered teachers as well as nuns there. Did you have that as well?
No, I think it was all nuns there.
Because what I used to think, I used to know when people go on about the nuns, I found the nuns were absolutely lovely. They were gorgeous, but the state registered teachers, oh, they were horrible. I remember I was only little, I was only about 5 years old, but I didn't like them, I remember. But the nuns I thought were absolutely, I just thought I'd ask that because I know nuns get a lot of flack. But I
Hmm.
found them lovely where I was, but I didn't like the state registered ones. But anyway, you continue, Christine.
Yeah, no, the sisters are really good. I
Mm.
made a best friend out of one of them, Sister Mary Lou. She's still alive. We don't see each other that much now. But yeah, I mean, my auntie Kathleen was really really nice, and yeah, sorry, I was reading that. My sister, yeah, she was really really nice. Kathleen, yeah, I loved her. She was lovely. So around that time, I stopped seeing her around 13. Got in with a bad crowd at school. Started failing. My father started being outwardly violent to me. Broke my finger. Had to go into school with a slight splint on it. And then I eventually I ran away from home, and when I ran away, they instead of coming back like I thought I would be, allowed back like every other kid, they said no, we're going to put her into care. So that was when I entered care, and that was okay. I mean, I quite enjoyed it. I know people say they don't. It was a sad place. There was lots of blood stains on the floor where the kids had slashed their wrists. The boys were very very
Yeah.
disturbed. A lot of them had come from Borstal. They used to beat up the staff often, which was really quite scary. They'd just be standing there one time, and then next minute they would punch one of the staff. Their noses would explode, and
Mm.
it was really quite dark. There was boys that were sexually abused by the social workers, and a lot of suicides swimming around. So I joined in as it was just the thing to do to take your sort of overdose. So I took some overdoses, got a couple of stomach pumps, and then when it came to 18, I just got bugged in a hostel. I mean, I don't know if that happens nowadays to kids in care. They just get, I mean, they should really get, a council flat or something. But back then, I just got put in a hostel, and it was a really weird. I found it weird because I didn't have the education then. I couldn't look after myself. They help you to sign on, and then they just leave you there,
Yeah.
and it was really weird. I felt quite terrified. I thought I didn't even know who I was, what I was doing there, and took another overdose, and then the kids'
Well,
home, there was a member of staff there called Dave King. He then said that I should go back to my parents, which looking back is a kind of a weird kind of thing. But he said that's all you've ever had. So why don't you go back there? So they called in my parents, and my mother wrote down this contract. And I had to sign this contract that if I go back there, I wasn't allowed to color my hair, wasn't allowed to wear any makeup, wasn't allowed to see any of my previous friends, couldn't do this, couldn't do that, had to, couldn't go out of an evening. And so I went back there, and I was working as a private detective. A lot of times, firms and stuff used to come to the home, like EMI was one of them.
mm,
And I did go to work for EMI for a little while to be a trainee computer repairer. Didn't last. And there was someone at our home knew someone that had a detective agency. So a few of us went along, and it was a trainee tracer, which was training to trace missing people, kind of bog standard, not exciting or anything. And so I went along, and I was the only one that got it. And a few of the boys were a bit miffed. My boyfriend at the time, Trevor, said, "Oh, that's like Ronnie Biggs getting a job as a cop." And so I just took it in my stride and started working there. And then when I went back to live with my parents, I went to work, wearing sort of frumpy dresses and that kind of thing. Eventually saved up to get a bed sit, carried on doing the private detective work. And I dotted around for different agencies just because I got very bored very easily. So I'd work for 6 months at one agency. And then once you've got into that business, which is pretty closed shop, and learned about it, then you can get accepted to another agency. So I would dot around, and I ended up working for ex-CID cops nationwide, which was quite fun. Then another set of guys who were like gangsters. There's a lot of gangsters that are in the private detective field, a lot of bent cops.
Oh, well, this is it, Christine. I remember someone saying to me, he was actually a prison guard. And he said, you know what? He said, you have two, the way he said it made me laugh. He said, you have two types of criminals. He said, you have the ones that get caught and are put in prison. And he said, you have the others who wear a police uniform and don't get put in prison. And it's like, I thought, he said, believe me, he said, the best, and this is a strange thing, the best minds in the police, some of them at detected crime, are the ones that potentially could be criminals themselves. It's like that Silence of the Lambs. Is it Silence of the Lambs, where you have to think like get into the mind of a criminal to be able to catch a criminal, which you'll understand that philosophy, won't you, when we go on to talk about the investigation work that you've done?
Yeah, I found those type of men that there was one called Frank Battis. He was ex-CID. He'd done a stint in prison. And when he got out of prison, Stuart Withers, who ran the detective agency, he was waiting for him apparently at the gate to say, I've got a job for you. And so he was my boss for a good number of years. And I think he was my favorite boss because he kind of taught me a lot, but he didn't actually teach me. We would get cases come in of people wanted this, people wanted that, and there was so much work. There was a lot of ex-MI5 officers there, like Gary Watkinson, and other guys, and it was quite interesting. And when I remember sitting there with an investigation, not knowing what to do, I think it was to check out whether somebody had a pilot's license, something like that, or I don't know, a missing plane. And I looked at it and I thought, well, how do I do that? I haven't done that kind of thing before. And I went into Frank Battis's office and I said, oh, Frank, I don't know how to do that. And he looked at me, leaned back, and he was a bit like DCI Burnside in The Bill, talked like that, looked a bit like that. And he said, what does it say above the door there? The door you just come out of. And I said, investigations department. And he said, where do you sit? I said, oh, I've got a desk in there. And he said, you've got a desk in there. It says that on the door. So why are you coming in here and asking me how to do that? And he threw it at me and he said, think.
Yeah,
and he taught me really how to just think, because nobody really knows how to investigate.
This is it. That's it, Chris. It's like all police work. You're throwing in there, and this nonsense that they've got now, which is nonsense, which a lot of police officers are just not liking, and senior police officers, even chief constables, don't like it. Is this having to do a policing degree in college before you join the police? No, you cannot. You cannot train to be a police officer. You have to get out there. What they do is they get you and they throw you out there and they say, right, get on with it. If you need advice for the first so many months, you've got 2 years, you've got someone there you can go to. But as you say, they put you in at the deep end. It's sink or swim, and that's the best way to learn. You can't learn in a college room. You might be able to learn about, you know, psychology or crime detection to a limited extent, but you can't get out there and do it. So he was right. That was the way they always did it. Go on, get on with it. Don't keep on asking me. So that's just refreshed me that.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it there. I had a strong sixth sense, like a psychic sense that I would kind of know how to do investigations, and that would come up strongly in my head. Around No, it was before that. It was before, yeah, it was before I got chucked back into care by my parents. My mother had a book. No, I tried to get close to my mother by reading her cheesy Mills and Boone book she used to have. She was very working class woman, worked in a factory. My father, adoptive father, was a cleaner. We had the basic food out of tins all the time. And there was no books in the house. And TV was like, game shows and Crossroads and all that. And so I would read her Mills and Boone to try and get close to her. And she used to come in with a pile from the factory from the other girls. And one day there was a book called Beyond Belief about the Moors murderers. And
Yeah, read that.
yeah, I read it and I found it very interesting. Being interested in the psychic side, thinking back, it's quite annoying that I read it because it wasn't true. It's basically a novel, but I didn't realize that at the time. So it's got like Ian Brady, almost being like a dark, I don't know, like a demon,
Yeah,
and it's got things like he can appear and disappear. And when David Smith ran from the room where he murdered Edward Evans, he appeared at the end of the alleyway. It's like, and he had him talking to ghosts, like, the Marquis de Sade watched and nodded at his pupil. It's very much and I suppose it was the first intelligent book I'd ever read, because I'd been, there was no, nothing intellectual going on at all in the home. And I was stimulated by the book. I thought it was really, really good. And I got it into my head that there was some kind of black in the book, because it's so occult laden. The book's very, really occult laden. And then it's got one of the cops saying, was black magic involved in this?
yeah, exactly.
And I thought to myself, yeah, it is involved. I really felt that really strongly. And so for some reason, I suppose big-headedness back at that age, I thought, I will write to Ian Brady and say, tell me all about the black magic side. I'll believe you. And so I did this at a pretty young age, but the letters were returned because they went to a prison, and he was in Wormwood Scrubs. And if you write to a prison, then your letters don't get through unless you've known them before. And so I remember getting going around school friends' houses, and we would ring up Wormwood Scrubs and say, have you got Ian Brady in there? And, skitter, laughing, schoolgirlish. And, it was something that I thought I would grow out of, that interest there. But it never grew. If anything, it took root and kind of got worse, that fascination in that the Moors murders case. If I'd have known that everybody else is pretty fascinated by it, but I didn't. My parents said, stop reading that book, and teachers weren't really interested in it. And so I just had the interest off and on. And then when I was working at Nationwide, I read in the newspaper that Ian Brady had been transferred to Park Lane Mental Hospital. And I remember thinking, it's a chance to, maybe letters can get through because he's not in prison anymore. And I thought, well, he might get letters from a lot of people. What can I put in that's a bit of a carrot? And so I went up took the train to where he lived, took pictures of it, took pictures of his school, took pictures of his house where he grew up. and sent some of them and said I got more of these. And I got a return letter nearly straight away and basically said, oh, they're very interesting letters, pictures. Have you got any more? And so I sent them, and I was talking about the occult. He basically spoke about Aleister Crowley. He said he used the tarot. He said, that he was psychic, and he basically conversed with an entity, and that he
Strange,
believed he's a bit like the Yorkshire Ripper that heard a voice from the graveyard.
Wasn't it
But he
something
kept
green?
that quiet. Pardon?
I remember reading in a book that was written after he died on his list, and it was something like a green entity or something.
Yes, it's green face. Yeah, the green face of death. He probably calls it a name, but he doesn't tell anyone. I think, oh no, there was something else. So he said to me that after death, and this is what I suppose Satanists think, after death, he will be in credit and he will go to a higher place. It's ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
I had this, belief system.
Well, he was nuts. I hate to use that term, but he was seriously mentally ill. And that's
very, very sick.
That's the thing where Myra Hindley couldn't get off on that one. I think that's why people say, oh, it was just because she was a woman. It wasn't just because she was a woman that she got the brunt of it. It was because people could see he was totally mentally ill, where she wasn't. She was as bright as a button. Oh, no, she was horrible here. And so it was he, but she was more
you're right. Yeah, I totally agree. In these killer couples, and I did investigate another killer couple where it's a similar thing, where there's one that's really involved in the occult, and the other one actually is sane and isn't. Not saying being involved in the occult is crazy, obviously it's not, but they have a kind of like a Satanistic view of life, and they operate to that. And the rest of us think, I mean, even if he is involved in that, he's not going to go anywhere higher for doing what he did. It's ridiculous. But it might be MK Ultra. We don't know. So I didn't know at that point. And he very quickly invited me to come and see him. And so I went to see him. Obviously, I thought I was going to be this, groundbreaking investigator that would find out all his secrets, and, it would make me a success, rather than, I felt like a failure in life. I didn't like being a private detective, really. I didn't like, I didn't like working for criminals. Mostly we were working for criminals. They were quite cold-hearted. And so I felt a failure. I wanted to be a writer. I thought, I know he's going to tell me all his secrets. I'm going to write this amazing book, and people will say, oh, aren't you a worthwhile person after all?
Well, the thing about being a private detective, it sounds so glamorous, doesn't it? It's like when you see detectives on the television, it looks so glamorous. It's not. A lot of it is a hell of a lot of mundane work. A lot of it's sitting around waiting, trying to locate or see something happening. But people have this over glamorous view of it, but it can be really drudgery, and you've got to have your brain continually ticking over, haven't you? Even though you might be sitting there looking at a blank wall for most of the day. That's the thing I find about it.
Yeah, it is. And the people I work for, not being mean about them, Stuart Withers, and there was a lot of the office was bombed at one time. Somebody blew the front door off. There was a lot of gangsterish. I said to Stuart Withers one time, I was thinking of leaving because I wanted to be a book writer, and he said he was going to break my legs. He said, oh, I'm not being. He said it won't collapse without you, but you're a good investigator.
Yeah.
And he said, if you're going to leave, he said, I'm going to break your legs. And he threw the chair across the room and walked out. I remember at the time I was so shut down that I laughed. But, now if someone said to me, I'd be like, terrified. But back then I was so shut down. I just laughed, but I did stay. And that was the way it was. It was kind of, it was like working for criminals,
Yeah.
And I think every detective agency out there are probably doing things that are criminal.
They will be. They will.
Yeah.
It's obvious. Do you know, Christine, just so people know, MK Ultra? Not everyone knows what that about. Can you explain briefly what MK Ultra entails?
Well, yeah, I came into that when after I met Shall I carry on telling the story and then get to the
Yeah, yeah,
Untitled?
you can too.
I
Yeah.
came across that quite interestingly, quite organically.
Mhm.
So it's quite an interesting story. So with the Brady thing, I went to see him, visited him, and I was very disappointed. I thought, no, it sounds weird, but I thought I'd be meeting the character in Beyond Belief. I thought
Yeah.
I'd be meeting someone that would, at least interest me, stimulate me. I'd go away thinking, oh, that was interesting. But instead of that, I was wheeled into someone that reminded me of my adoptive uncle in St. Brendan's mental home. He was pretty, there he was smelling, and an old secondhand suit on. And you knew you were meeting somebody who was sick and somebody who'd
Mm.
been in a hospital. He was a patient, a mental patient in a
Yeah.
mental hospital a long time. And that's who you were meeting, who dribbled and who when he ate his biscuit, it sort of chewed with his mouth open and spit out bits. And, I thought, hang on, I'm not a mental nurse. I don't want to be here. It's not
Mm.
it's not filmic. It's not, what I was expecting
Yeah.
actually. And I went out of there feeling pretty deflated and thinking, I think I'll knock that on the head. And so I did, I spoke to my boyfriend Ray at the time and said, oh, I'm not going to do that. He was like boring and we sort of skittered and laughed about it. And it was all very, ha, 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 and that kind of thing. And I remember it was only a couple of weeks later, I was reading the Sunday People newspaper and I saw in it Mystery Blonde meets Ian Brady. And I remember when I was there, I asked one of the guards, does he get a lot of visitors? And they said, no one apart from his solicitor and Lord Longford. And I'd actually met Lord Longford, Lord Longford, Brady said to contact him. I'd written to him, went and had lunch with him up at
Mm.
the House of Lords, but we ended up in a cafe nearby because the cafe there was shut. And so I knew Lord Longford. And so I found it interesting that I was the only visitor that he'd had in a lot of years. I wondered what it was about me that had made him, made him interested enough to meet me. Anyway, read the story, Mystery Blonde visit. And I remember my first thought was, oh, someone else has visited him. Some blonde
Yeah.
has visited him. I didn't think it was me because you don't think you're going to read about yourself in a newspaper, And I remember taking it round my boyfriend Ray's and saying, look at this. And he looked at it and he folded it and looked at me. And I said, is it me? And he goes, oh, you silly bitch. You've got yourself in the shit.
How old were you, Christine, when that was
Oh,
happening?
I don't do ages. I don't do
Oh, sorry.
ages. But pretty young.
I was thinking that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you how. 22 at the time.
Yeah.
22, young.
That's what I
And,
mean. You've had an adventurous life. You really, really
oh,
are.
thank you. So everyone will be Googling now. When was that? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so yeah, so he went, oh, you silly bitch, look what you've done. And I I knew a guy, I'll say his name because it doesn't matter, Alan Graham, who worked for a detective agency in Ealing. And I'd worked there for a while. One of the agencies I've dotted around, not a great agency, I have to say. He was a manager there. And I remember we used to go for drinks and, I got off with him, snogged him once or twice. And so I saw him as a friend. Now, one time when we'd gone for drinks, he said, he was a bit disgusted that I was interested in Brady. And I said, well, I'm disgusted with myself being interested in Brady. I said, once I had been looking for my natural parents and I had ordered my mother's birth certificate and she was born in Hull. And I remember when I received it thinking, is that why I was so drawn to Brady? Because, he'd been to Borstal in Hull, and it was literally just like a 2-second thought. Maybe he's my real father, and because adoptive and just literally a mad thought, because adoptive people always think, well, why was I dumped? I mean, my schoolgirl mother had parents. why didn't they keep me? I was one of them. And so the idea that I might be the daughter of someone notorious, pleased me, because
Yeah.
it would be an excuse for getting rid of someone, wouldn't it? And it did
Mm.
have in my file that my father was a criminal. Turned out nothing to do with murder. So I remember thinking, oh, maybe that's why I'm so interested in Brady. Maybe he's my natural father. Just a completely crazy thought for half a second when I got the birth certificate, which was around that time. And I told Alan when we'd had one of our drinks, one of our, silly nights out, and, much hilarity and laughing about it and sinking pints and the big joke kind of thing. Anyway, I told Alan, I said, I'm in the papers. And he said, oh my God, you should disappear, go up to Scotland, hide out, which is, you don't need to do that. But I'd sucked it all up and said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So took the time off work, was just getting packed and ready to, go on, just dot around in B&Bs up in, the Highlands of Scotland. He's Scottish, probably that's why he said Scotland. And he rang me and he said, oh, Chris, meet me outside work and meet me in the pub there. So I said, but why? I'm just going to get on a train. So I was quite gussied up. And he said, no, just come and meet me. Just have a drink before you go. So I thought, oh, okay. Went along. And bizarrely, just before that, Alan had introduced me to a psychic called Mike Baker. And Mike Baker has said, you think you're going to stay in your job, but you're not. You're going to go to somewhere like Greece. You'll come back, then you'll go to America. Then you'll make contact with the media. And once you made contact with the media, it won't ever be broken. And I thought, oh, what a load of crap, because I loved my job. I didn't travel, didn't like traveling, and I didn't have any relationship with the media. So that was odd. Anyway, met Graham, sat there for Alan Graham, sat there with him just for a few minutes. He looked a bit sheepish and he said, I think you should talk to the press. He said, look, I've brought along some people. And there was a cameraman there. There was a journalist called Ted Hines there. And they basically said to me, oh, we know why you're writing to Brady. You think he's your father. And I said, oh, you must be bloody kidding me. I said, and I took out my birth certificate. I said, it was, this was it. And it was my mother comes from Hart. He went to Borstal there. I said, that's a big leap, isn't it? And I said, I just, my mother had the book. And they were like, oh, your mother had the book. Maybe she knows. And I was like, oh, God, come on. This is like, and I disappeared off, ran off. They came to my home address, said, come with us for, bite to eat. They took me to Joe Allen's in London. Another journalist appeared called Phil Hall, really very attractive. I found him really attractive. He said straight away, oh, Ted said you were good looking, but I didn't realize how good looking. And so we immediately, I don't know if he said that just to sucker me in, but I immediately quite bonded with him. I was quite I saw him as the good journalist and Ted as the bad one. And they said to me, this is a great story. And I said, but what's the story? And they said, well, he's your father. And I said, no, come off it. I found him in a book. And they said, well, you thought though, didn't you? I said, I thought just for like a fraction of a second, like a mad thought. And they were like, well, the story is really interesting. And at that point, I didn't realize, what the press were like. But I mean,
they can be rough.
They
can be extremely vicious, the press.
Well, I've had this out with James Hanning, who's writing my life story now, apparently. And he said to me, why didn't you just tell them to get lost? But I said, listen, you don't understand about working class girls and how they're brought up. I was taught to believe that anybody that had a job like that was my betters, and anybody middle class were my betters. So my betters had got hold of me and I didn't have a way out, and if you don't have parents, like mine weren't proper parents, you've got nowhere to turn. the only person I had to turn to was Alan. So I was basically ringing Alan and saying, "What do I do? What do I do?" And
Yeah.
he was saying, "Oh, you talk to them, just tell them the truth." And I said, "They're saying he's my father." Of course, I didn't know at this point he had sold me for £5,000 to them, and I didn't
Well,
realize.
Christine, thing is, this is because because the industry I was put into, I had this all the time. We used to be told you couldn't speak to the press unless you were given permission by the company you were with. Everything was done through no official channels. But we grew up with the message, don't ever trust them. But the thing is, if you don't talk to them, they'll go and make it up anyway. So you're in a no-win situation. They'll just make it up if
Mm,
you don't talk to them.
mm.
And unless you're very rich, very, very rich, people think you can just sue for defamation
Oh, you
at the drop
can't.
of a hat, so you can't.
I've been in the Guardian recently, which I'll get onto, where I
Mm,
was even told by the union, you can't afford a lawyer, so it's
yeah.
defamation. So I didn't. I mean, I was sitting in Joe Allen with them, glamorous Phil Hall, and fed a really nice burger. And then they said, "We'll take you to a hotel in Swiss Cottage." And I was part thrilled because I thought, well, little me, why am I important? And then the other part of me nervous. But the idea of going to a fancy hotel, obviously, I did like it. So they whipped me off to the hotel, got me in a room. They were next door. And then I started crying. I think the reality of what's going on hit me, and I was
Mm,
crying and crying, and they said, "Look, are you buckling now? We've got this story." They were quite nasty, considering I was so young. I wouldn't ever be a journalist like this myself. It was actually appalling.
mm,
People talk about being abused by the press, because they got papped going into the Priory, and yet this is what I went through. And Ted Hines, they played good cop, bad cop. So Phil was the good cop, Ted was a bad one.
mm.
Ted said to me, "You got a choice here. You've been caught visiting and writing to Ian Brady. You can be some silly bitch that is obsessed with him, or you can be his daughter, and that's a choice you've got."
Yeah,
And I
that's it.
cried and I cried. And he went out. Phil came in, comforted me, and said, "Look, I'm trying to control him, but he's really angry now." Maybe they were angry. They just paid £5,000 for
Yeah,
something that was nothing. And so I didn't know. Obviously, they paid Alan at that point. He was a good businessman. He had obviously, probably, I'd say, got them under contract, and I wasn't fessing up. It turned out to be a non-story. It wasn't a story. They left me there that night. I remember didn't sleep all night. I cried, I cried, I cried. I remember looking out the window, seeing a milkman delivering milk to the hotel, and I remember thinking, how can the world carry on just as normal? When my world's just completely
mm,
destroyed. And I just thought, I have this choice. What can I be? And then I was saying to myself, was I some silly bitch who was obsessed with him? Because I really, if you could pinpoint the interest, I wasn't sure what it was. It was like, it was the dark magic thing. Was I going to find out? And I thought, well, maybe they should put, then I'm some silly bitch interested in him. And to this day, I feel quite resentful about that because I didn't make myself aware that everybody is interested. I
yeah,
was quite isolated in that. So I felt ashamed about it. They shamed me over it. And I said to them once I met him, I didn't want to go back there. I didn't write to him. After that, I did get a letter from him, but I
mm,
hadn't responded to it. And felt slightly guilty because, he is a mental patient in a mental hospital, but had wiped it away, and they said to me, "Okay, we want you to go and see him. You're on his visitors list. Go up. We're going to take you up to see him. And you've got to take your birth certificate." No, my mother's birth certificate that said Hull, and say to him, "Do you know her? Are you my father?" I said, "You're kidding me. I'm not going to sit there, with someone like that and say, 'Are you my father?' What a load of shit." Um, anyway, they insisted. They said, "No, you've got to do this, or we'll have to print that you're just interested, you're fascinated by him. People will be disgusted." So I got on a plane. They gussied me up took pictures of me, which I've still got, which I didn't look like myself at all. They put loads of red lipstick, gold lame. And then I went up to see him, got there really, really late, and they wouldn't let me in. And I said, look, there's 10 minutes left. I said, can I go in? Anyway, went in. Brady was there eating fish and chips, and he put that down, went in the visiting room, and said, oh, you're not really supposed to surprise visit me. And I thought, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to be. I said, the press have written about me in this story. I passed it to him. He read it, then held it up with his fingers and said, can I keep this? And I remember thinking, well, I actually want that. And he sort of looked at me while I got confused, as if, to say I'm going to have it anyway. So in the end, I said, yes, okay. And then he said to me, oh, you should avoid the press. And it was weird because the press were waiting outside for me and they brought me there. And I was too actually nervous to tell him that. He seemed like somebody a little bit that could lose their rag, even though there was a guard there at that. I had 3 visits with him. The last visit didn't have a guard. The first one had a guard sitting across the room in this quiet room.
Christine, can I just jump in here 1 minute? Because this person's just put on the most bizarre comment. Is anyone believing this? I think very well that it's documented, isn't it? You're not saying it that it's not.
No, it's documented. Not only is it in my Sunday Times best-selling book published by Hodder and Stout, and that have to legal everything. The front pages are still there, and James Hanning, who's just written a book on Kim Philby, is writing a book on me, and he agreed. He said it's so fantastical. He said you have to have somebody else write your life story because of the bits, but it's been legally proven and stood up, and other people were there, not just me. Sorry, it does annoy me, but then it's just don't let it get you down. But it's not a story of making love with Brad Pitt. It's a pretty depressing story, actually. Yes, it is fully legally documented. Hodder and Stoughton are one of the top publishers in the country, and in James Hanning's book that will be out soon, that will be doubly legally documented, and the front pages are there. It does annoy me. And so the second visit, 10 minutes for that, and came out. Press were there. Got in the car, got back to the hotel, and I was pretty upset. I rang Alan again. He was my best friend. I was ringing my boyfriend, Ray. He didn't know what to do. Rang Alan because he was the most, intelligent person I know. I didn't think he'd sold me out at that point. I said, what do I do? He said, tell them to take you out of the country. So I merely I couldn't think for myself at this point. I turned around and said to them, take me out of the country. And they said, okay, we'll take you out of the country. So it was like kind of weird that they were doing what I just told them to do. They said, well, what did Brady say? I said, he said, no, don't know your mother, nothing to do, what a load of rubbish. And Ted Hines looked at me and he said, you didn't say that to him. I said, no, I did. He said, no, you didn't. I said, all right, then I didn't. He said, right then, so he still might be your father. And I said, no, I said, like, it's rubbish. Next thing, they took me to the port. We got on a ferry. I think we stayed at another hotel down near the ferry. I think we traveled down and then stayed somewhere which was a little hotel before we got on the ferry. Anyway, at some point, and I think it was before we got on the ferry at this port town, might have been Portsmouth, I don't know where it was, but seasidey, and the paper came out. I was advertised on telly, and on the telly they made me watch it a picture of me flashed up. My life involved with Ian Brady, how Ian Brady affected my life, picture of Brady, read all about it in Tomorrow's People. And I remember thinking, how is my story interesting?
Mm.
You know, some silly girly who found him interesting. Why is it interesting? Really? And they'd gusted me up. Anyway, the newspaper, they brought it in. Um, I don't know how I went survived that, but it was pretty shocking. It said on the front cover, "I am Brady's daughter," with a
I
big
remember.
picture of me,
Yeah.
looking like I was pleased about the whole idea.
Yeah.
Then it said, you know, I mean, flattering about my appearance, beautiful blonde, claims to be his daughter. I was like, what the hell? I was really upset. I was crying. I was screaming. Phil came in, made me drink vodka and orange. I don't know why. I mean, I don't even like vodka. He said, calm down, drink this. So I gulped it back. And they said, look, it doesn't matter. Today's chip paper, you know, that kind of thing. They said, oh, we had to say that. We had to say that you said it, because if we'd have said it, we'd got corrected at a later time, we'd look bad. But if you're saying it, it doesn't matter if it turns out to not be true. I said, but it's not true. And he said, well, it doesn't matter then, does it? But you know, that affects my life because people think that I have come forward and said that. So anyway,
Yeah.
they put me on. I was pretty upset. They put me on the ferry. We were all on the ferry. Phil was making jolly, and they were reading Private Eye magazine, and they were reading a story, and it was about some it girl, and they were saying, oh, she shouldn't have got 10 grand for her story. And I looked at them and I said, oh, do girls get paid for their stories? And they both looked at each other and they went, no, not if they're silly bitches like that. And they both got quite aggressive with me. And I remember
Yeah.
at the time not knowing why, but it's because a front page story is 10 grand minimum, but they weren't paying me. Well, they paid Alan Graham. So next thing, we got to France, got in the car. Ted slept in the back. I was with Phil Hall in the front, and we drove through France. And that was quite surreal. There was Phil Collins playing on the radio, Feel It in the Air Tonight, you know, that he was playing, then Simply Red. And I thought, you know, I was really felt as if I was falling in love with Phil, just because I suppose I'd never been near a man like that who had any power. He was good looking, and so I guess I forgot about, you know, what was going on and made it more about focusing on Phil. He was focusing on me, and when we got to the hotel, we kissed, and we spent a week in the south of France and swimming, going to little villages, and we became lovers in the south of France, Phil and I. And you know, it wasn't cheap. He said he was seeing somebody, but he'd wanted to finish it for a long time, and he wanted to see me, to go out with me properly. And so I believed him. I mean, you know, while we were out there was a second story came out. It was a middle page one this time, about me confronting Brady, supposedly. And that seemed to just pass by without much thought about it. I kind of thought that I would stay there with those two guys forever. You know, it was like England was far away. There was no problems. And, you know, it was quite idyllic. It was, you know, the best holiday I've ever had. I think, you know, they knew about good food, they knew about good restaurants, they knew about music, and my head was completely turned. They knew about good brandy, just a world that I never knew about myself. And we got in the car, we headed back to the ferry, and I remember sitting on the ferry feeling like the cold of England arriving and thinking something horrible, and yet not really knowing what that was horrible. And got back, and I was living with my parents at the time. I was in between bed sits, and so I was just there, not really, they'd rented me a room basically. And Phil dropped me off there, and sorry, somebody asked a question.
This is a good one. Because that's a really good question. How'd you actually introduce yourself to Ian Brady when you first met him? Can you remember?
Yeah, it was quite, I felt quite overwhelmed because he was a real person, and yet didn't seem, he looked like Ian Brady, but I thought, oh, it's not like the person in the book. So I felt a sinking sense of disappointment, and I switched into interview mode. Just, oh, where did you grow up? Oh, what are you feeling now you're in prison? So it's almost like I took on this persona of interviewer. I didn't know how to speak to him like a normal person. I felt overwhelmed. So I switched into like being an interviewer, interviewing a person. And that, when I came back from that first meeting, he wrote me a letter saying, "You're a journalist. That was a dirty trick you played on me, writing to me like a normal person. You're a journalist." Of course, I wasn't. I didn't know what the media was. So I
A
wrote back.
normal person. That's ironic for him to say, isn't it? Telling you
Well, you
now.
know what I mean. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
know.
getting back to, so I went to my father appeared at the door. He said, "You can't come in. You've shamed our name. It's not even your name, Hart." He said, I told you to not use our name, and you've brought it into disrepute, and get lost. Here's your things." He put my things in a bin bag. He passed the bin bag to Phil Hall. And Phil Hall came back to the car and went, "What are we going to do with you?" I'd sent him ahead to say, I thought they'd let me in, but no, they didn't let me in.
So your name was on loan to them. You weren't actually part of the family. You were
I
just on
know.
loan. Terrible.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, that,
It gives
Christine.
me great
Yeah.
pleasure to still use it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, so, I said to Ted was in the car at that point. I said, what are we going to do then? What are all three of us going to do? It's so naive. But then I was shut down because of the abuse. I thought, oh, where are we going to go next? Where are the three of us going to go next? Anyway, Ted got out of the car and then seemed to disappear. And I said to Phil, "Why are we driving off? What about Ted?" And he goes, "But I've just dropped him at his house." He didn't even say goodbye to me. Didn't even say, after all that time, goodbye. I mean, it just, reinforces what I was to him, and the fake friendship and all that. So I was pretty upset, and I said, "Oh," and I said, "But when will I see him again then?" And he goes, "You'll probably never see him again. Why would you see him again?" He said, "The story's over." And that gave me a further sinking feeling. And Phil started saying, "I don't know what I'm going to do with you," as if, "Oh, hang on, I thought we were in a love relationship." And he said, "Well, where shall I put you?" And he drove up to a rather skanky B&B in Earl's Court and paid, I think, for 3 nights and dropped me in there. And soon as I was in there, I wasn't in there long, where a guy knocked on the door and said, "Oh, you could earn a lot of money, working for me." I said, "What do you mean working for you?" He dropped me in a knocking shop. He dropped me in a
Oh,
knocking
God.
shop.
Yeah.
Um,
Disgusting.
yeah, and people moan and say they want compensation for what the press did to them. Because I'm not
Yeah.
well-to-do,
Rich.
I can't get anything for that. Anything for that.
Mm.
Phil bizarrely carried on coming round to sleep with me. I bizarrely at that point, and people do question that, but didn't you realize what he'd done to you? But if you're shut down, you're shut down.
Yeah.
And so I carried on sleeping with him. I wasn't enjoying it though, and he used to say to me, "How come you need a pint of lager before you sleep with me?" And it's, he was horrible as why. But again, back then I didn't know. I thought, oh, I've got some fault wrong with me. I can't sleep with my boyfriend. And I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry," and all this kind of stuff. And eventually, a friend of mine, Robert Barnett, I called him and he said, "Look, I've got an old house that I'm selling, but you could stay there. There's a mattress on the floor, but the house is empty." So I came out of there, went to stay in the in his house and carried on seeing Phil. And Phil took me out to dinner, nice places. He took me out on jobs he'd done. And I stopped working for where I was working. They all knew about the story. They were like, "Oh my God, you claim to be related. That's really mad of you." And I was like, "No, I didn't. I didn't." But they weren't believing me. And my boyfriend, Ray, at the time, he was upset. He said, "I don't want to go out with you anymore. My mum's upset about what you did." It was like what I
You done it,
did.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
and even a friend of mine was like, "Oh, what'd you do it for?" And it was like, "Hang on, I didn't do anything." Um, and then I didn't get paid for it or anything, and the whole thing was bizarre. I started to get quite paranoid with my friends who were reacting to me in quite a negative way. I thought at the time, why are you being so aggressive to me? Why are you being angry? I suppose they were like, I suppose they must have thought that I did say that, but I thought, well, hang on, they know me. They know that I wouldn't say something like that. And it was really quite a lonely time.
See, this is Christine, and they don't understand people who go, oh, it's in the press, and they believe every word that's in the press. Even though I'm not a fan of this, because he can say some harsh things, Alex Belfield sums up the press perfectly. Well, media. He said they'll go on there, say like that poor child who has been, I can't mention his name because it upsets me, who has been murdered by those two horrible people recently. Um, you know, he'll say the press will be all out discussing all this. They'll be actually rubbing their hands together that they've got a story to tell, the
Mm.
majority of them. And it's like people don't realize just how really cutthroat it is in that industry. They
Oh,
they're right there. They are bloodsuckers. They're terrible,
but
terrible.
these two guys, I mean, what they did was really bad, especially my age. I wasn't
Mm,
an older. I was a kid, more or less, and you could tell that I'd been abused. I mean, they made jokes about it. Even out in France, we were served by a waiter in one restaurant, and he turned out to be from Manchester, and they
mm,
both pissed themselves laughing. They went, "Oh, Chris, you're not going to start thinking it's your father, are you? Oh, daddy, here, and
mm.
they knew it was horse shit,
Yeah.
and they just took the piss out. I mean, it was horrendous. And it affected my life. It affected my relationship with my friends back then, affected with my boyfriend,
Mm,
who thought I'd had some part in it, who thought, oh, you must have said that, because it's quite a convoluted story. And then I was getting angry with them, thinking, why don't you, sympathize.
mm,
And okay, there was a girl, Maya. She was sympathetic. She said, "Oh, bastards," and then she started saying, "Oh, you look like a silly tart." And so that again,
mm,
I was very isolated, and it was only Robert, that had helped me so much to give me that flat. That as my only friend back then, and I still, love
mm,
him for doing that. So I stayed there and I was seeing Phil, and then he came to me and said, "Oh, Ian Brady's written to me to say he believes that you're his daughter." And he showed me the letter and he said, "Oh, I remember a Mary. Yeah. I definitely remember. And I think, yeah, she's definitely mine." And I said, "Come on." I said, "This is like rubbish."
mm,
And he said, "Well, you've got to reply or we'll do a story anyway." He did a story anyway. Brady admits he is her father. Picture of me. I thought, well, I've had enough of this. So when he went, Phil then took his girlfriend Tina, another journalist, off to the off to the hotel where we'd first made love,
mm,
the Pont de la Gare in Provence, in France. And he took her there. I said, why are you taking her to our hotel? And he said, "Oh, but it was a really nice hotel." And I thought, well, hang on, but it's our hotel. It's
mm,
like suddenly I don't mean anything, but yet he's seeing me. And I couldn't work out these two things. And for some reason, I got it in my head it was a good idea to just go to live in America, which is quite weird. It was all this psychic had said about the media in America, and
mm,
he'd got it wrong. He said Greece, but it was France. So I said to my employers, I hope to work for you sometime in the future, but because of all this press stuff that's making me depressed, I'm going to go and live in a different country. So I didn't have much in the bank. I had about 500 quid. I bought my ticket, went out there, scored myself a bed sit in a really rough area, and got a job, cocktail waitress, lived there, worked there. Meanwhile, Phil Hall kept in contact, and he said to me, "Oh, you should write to Brady. That'd make you a proper journalist." And so I didn't have anything else going on. So I wrote to Brady, said, actually, the press stuff was rubbish. I can't be your daughter. Brady wrote back to me in New York and said, "Oh, but don't you want to be a model? You said you wanted to be a model. Why?" It's really sick. "Why don't you go to Playboy and Penthouse and try and get some money for the story? I'm sure they'd be interested in it.
Yeah.
And then you can send me £500 and Galois cigarettes, a
Oh, he
thousand."
likes the cigarettes, doesn't he? My God. He loves the
Yeah, and I know
cigarettes.
his little friend Alan will probably say, "Oh, he
Mm,
didn't say any such thing." I mean, he's got
mm.
this guy Alan who's written this book, and everything I've said. So, "Oh no, she didn't." Brady said she didn't. Brady never said that. Brady's a liar. He's very immature. He's a liar. He doesn't
Is
admit.
that the one? Is that the book, the white book that came out? The one with the white cover? And it's
I
just got a
don't
picture of
know.
him and Brady
Yeah, I don't
after he
know.
died.
I don't know. I don't read his stuff, but he's a complete enemy of mine because he's a complete mouthpiece for Brady,
Because
who
one of them said there was a book I read, a white book, I can't remember the name of it. It was after he died, and it was very more or less dismissive and offhand, calling you she, her, this. I don't think it even mentions you by name, but it's obvious it's you, and it's just dismissively, discussing you, oh, this woman. And I thought that
Yeah,
was the one you
yeah,
were talking
no,
about.
exactly. It's like, oh, and oh, only met him for 10 minutes. No, I didn't. Sadly, I had the hour first time, the 10 minutes second time, and then I had another over an hour with him on the third
Yeah.
occasion. But he's a mouthpiece for Brady. I've proof of all these things.
Mm,
Anyway, so it's obviously, it was in a written letter. Later, I gave it to the media. Later, it became a story. But the letter was there, demanding to do these things. Anyway, I showed it to Phil because I was writing to him for Phil to please Phil, to be a journalist. Meanwhile, I was covering stories when I was out there, like one on Madonna. So I was doing a bit of journalism out there, and Phil taught me to file copy, how to do that, ring copy takers, read the story down the phone, and I started to enjoy it and do it. And Phil was putting the stories in the paper under his name, forgetting to pay me. So I was literally eating a loaf of bread. I'd buy a loaf of bread, make it last about 2 weeks, eating maybe a
mm.
slice a day with salad cream, and couldn't pay my rent at all to the guy. He threatened to throw me out. Got round that in a certain way and carried on living there. It was a really bad, rough area. I went to the shops once to get some milk, and some guys followed me back, um, shouting about the English, get
Mm.
out of our town. And they sat outside this house. Now, if they'd have wanted to come in and beat the shit out of me or rape me, it could have been easy because there was no lock on the front door. I mean, I just thank God that I didn't, get murdered.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad. And so the Brady thing went back and fro. Phil told me to reply to him. I replied, "Oh, I can't get you that. I don't want to appear in Play." Obviously, I didn't want to appear in Playboy and Penthouse. And Phil told me to ask him some questions about David Smith, which I did. Then reported it back to Phil Hall. Phil Hall then did another story on David Smith, and so this was going on. Again, nobody was paying me anything for doing it.
Just let me add, Christine, so people who don't know, David Smith was the person who actually he was married to our fiance at the time, wasn't he? Of Mary Hindy's sister, and he was the one that blew it up to the police after they killed the last victim,
Yeah,
wasn't it? The
yeah.
17-year-old man. Yes.
So there's a lot of fascination in Smith, but again, I didn't see it journalistically. I wasn't a journalist. Well, I was trying to be at that point. I didn't see the interest in Smith, but there
Mm,
was a lot of so Brady then spoke a lot about Smith and how he misjudged him. That I was passing the letters back to
yeah.
Phil. Phil was putting them in, having a rare old time, putting them in because he couldn't get Brady to reply to him. He was using me.
Mm,
All the time, though, I was getting to know a serial killer. I was having a relationship with a serial killer because I was writing to him. Now, it's not the greatest thing to do. So it's almost like Phil was keeping clean spiritually, energetically, but I wasn't keeping clean. I was
yeah.
the one telling him about bits I was doing in my life. Oh, I went down to Greenwich Village. Oh, I joined a spiritualist church. I started having really weird things happen in that room. I ended up on Staten Island, and it was like a down and outs hostel. There was loads of old men there. I was in the upper attic room. It was it was horrible. It was so cold up there. There were sheets on the window to keep the cold out. It was pretty dingy,
Mm,
and I started to experience being able to talk to spirits. Now, at that point, I thought, oh, am I going mad? Am I turning into a schizophrenic? Um, and I started to see entities in the room. I started to really have all this experience, like psychic experiences. But I started to think, is it connected with Brady? So I went to a spiritualist church in New York, um, met a man called Reverend Ron Fredericks, and he tested me and he said, oh, you're mediumistic and psychic, and I can get you working.
mm,
So he took me out with him on various jobs and, taught me psychometry, which is when you hold something and you can
yeah.
read what someone has done or read their energy, and taught me a lot. Actually, I hung out with him for a long while. He wanted me to work with him to do paid work, and for some reason I withdrew from that, and I don't know why, but I did, and I stopped hanging out with him. I think it was that he had a girlfriend at the time, and the girlfriend was getting quite jealous of me. And if ever I'm in that scenario, I tend to back off because I'm a bit scared of women, and I just thought, oh, she's been a bit bitchy, and I think that was
Mm,
why I backed completely off. And then I decided to come back to London and I moved in, school. No, I think Ted Hines put me up for a little while. So I lived with the journalist Ted Hines, tidied his flat, cooked for him to get free rent. I used to go up to the pubs and wine bars on Fleet Street. After living with him, I met another reporter, Mydram Jones, and I ended up living with him in his flat in Bloomsbury. He took me out, showed me how to journalize a little bit more, and ended up eventually getting my own little studio flat, kind of tiny place, and started off a detective agency working for the press.
yeah.
And so I contacted the Sunday Mirror, who I knew because Phil had introduced me to Andrew Golden. They knew me. Chris House, etc. So I started working for him because they knew me. And then one day I was with Mydram Jones in the wine press, I think it was called, or maybe the Stab in the Back, one of those little pubs, and there was loads of guys in Crombie's, and they looked really they reminded me of the guys who ran the private detective agencies. They looked
Yeah.
evil, they looked like gangsters, they looked really
Yeah.
evil. And I said, who are those guys there? Thinking that he'd say they were like gangster. And he said, News of the World. And he said it in such a way like, oh, News of the World. And I remember Phil Hall had spoken about how he wanted to work there and how it was the top rank and how they were really scary.
Mm,
And so I developed a little fascination with, oh, what are they like? What are they like? And so next thing I heard Phil Hall had gone there, and he had become the overall editor, like Andy Coulson's position before Andy Coulson, and so he was the overall editor. The second in command was Greg Miskew and Alex Marinchek. And I thought, well, if he's there, and I knew Phil, I knew how silly he was, I knew him. So it was like someone And so I thought, well, he's gone there. I thought, why don't I? I'm not having someone else have this experience of these dark, fascinating people, and I'm not going to have it. So I wrote to Greg Miskew and I wrote to Alex Marinchek. I looked their names up, wrote to them and said, I'm a private detective and I've filed stories before. And Greg called me up, met me in the pub, and I told him the whole story of what I just told you. And he found it amusing, actually. And he said, oh, you seem right for us. And I think the reason why he accepted me, they have a lot of private investigators try and work there. They had dirt on me. And Alex Marinchek, whenever we used to have parties, how you always used to say, oh, how's your dad, Chris? How's your dad getting on? You seen daddy lately? And it's almost like they like it that they have got something on you they can blackmail you with.
Yeah. Exactly.
They knew I was mortified by the whole thing and didn't want to ever mention ever again. And they used to bring it up every now and again, almost to keep me down. And I used to have a tattoo of a boyfriend on my arm, Trevor, and it was stuck over by a plaster. And at parties, they would do things like, oh, you're hiding your tattoo, you're hiding your working class roots. Why don't you rip that plaster off right now, and why don't you tell everyone who your dad is? That is how the news of the world roll, because that's how they can get you to do things you don't want to do. So I started working for them, and meanwhile I had made friends with the author Colin Wilson, had gone to stay with him in the summer, liked his book The Outsider. He then said to me, oh, you should write a book about your life. And I tried to write a book about my life and didn't get very far. Tried to get it published, got an agent, Jeffrey Simmons, and Jeffrey tried every publisher. Then after many years, he came to me and said, oh, I found a publisher, Nathan, gosh, I can't remember his second name, New Author Publications, a guy called Nathan. And he said he's formed a limited company just to publish your book. Isn't that exciting, Christine? And so I met with Guy Nathan, and he said, I can't pay you any money for it, but I'm sure you'll make money. The book was called The Man in the Picture. They changed it. They got me to sign a contract, and then they called it The Devil's Daughter. I know, put a picture of me on the front, and I didn't receive a penny piece from it. What they did, they put it out everywhere, even got a review in the Daily Mail, only because Colin Wilson had written the intro. And he had changed bits in it where it had been, I don't know why I was interested in Ian Brady. He took that out and put, I was sure now that this was my father. It was appalling. I moaned about it to Colin Wilson. Colin Wilson went, oh, why don't you just, be a published author? But I thought, well, hang on, it's under false pretenses. So how can you move forward, And so what happened then? I think either I decided, yes. I had a break from writing to Brady, but then when the book was coming out, I felt that I should inform him. So I said, this book is coming out. I don't agree with it. They're calling it The Devil's Daughter. They're trying to make money out of you. At the end of the day, I think the book sold quite a lot because it got in the mail. I didn't see a penny piece from that. What they did, the publishers, I think it's still on Amazon. The publishers, it's quite funny. They started the limited company, and then when they'd got the proceeds from the sales, they then ceased the limited company. So if I went to them and said, hang on, you owe me money, they say, no, it's a limited company and it's folded now. It was a scam on me. And Jeffrey Simmons is a proper literary agent. He took part in that. He did take part, and he introduced me to them. And I didn't see a penny piece. And it was again more or less like the front page. It was another scam. It was another thing saying I was related to him. It was another thing where I was on the front cover. It was a picture of me, literally, and I didn't get paid for it. I mean, I didn't want money for it
Mm.
because it seemed wrong, but still, it was
Oh,
another being like milked,
yeah.
And so I wrote to Brady, told him about it. He said, he would try and get it stopped. I think he tried legally to get it
Mm.
stopped. Um, couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Um,
It's very difficult.
he said to me, meanwhile, "Oh, have you changed your appearance?" And I thought, well, that's really weird to say, have I? Why does that matter? Um, he had never been any way sexual to me in a letter or anything like that. And so I said, well, no, I haven't changed my appearance. I still have blonde hair, And he then wrote back again and said, oh, good, because my visits now are now unsupervised.
Do you know?
And obviously, I
Cri-
have that letter.
Yeah,
Visits, and it's been much in the newspapers. Again, that guy who wrote the book went,
yeah.
oh, no, it's not true. um,
Christine, I'm just going to have to jump in here because somewhat I don't know if they're messing about or not. People are asking you, answer my question. This fella, he's now the two of them have said the same thing. I think it looks suspiciously that they're both doing it in type. They haven't asked a
oh, but
question.
yes, we're going to get to that, Chris. Can you tell him we're going to
Well,
get to that?
Chris,
Oh,
we
sorry.
know it's not the real Chris Fay. He's not the one saying answer my question. It's someone else, and they just if they carry on, they're going to get blocked. It's up to them.
Yeah,
They're
will
going
you
to get
tell them I'm
blocked.
just going to get to that? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. They can
Oh,
fast forward.
it's not Chris that was saying that, though. By the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So sorry. So yeah, I'll try and go faster. He said, yeah, my visits will be alone with you. He had a thing that he was Hannibal Lecter, that the guy in Succession who plays Roy Logan was in the first Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs, and he said, oh, it's based on me because it's a Scottish actor. And he said, now because I've, been a good patient, whatever, my visits, they didn't have a guard in there. So I'd literally be in there by myself with him. So to cut a long story short, to get to the Cali Diamond stuff, I had the visit with him. Very boring as usual. Ian Brady is not an intellectual. He's got nothing to say. He's basically just someone from a Glasgow council house who, has talked in a middle class way, but he's not like that. It's just one of his personas he puts out. So sat there with him. At the end of the visit, thank God, the nurse came in and said, oh, finish now. And I was like, oh, praise the Lord, because I was bored, rigid. And I hugged him a goodbye, just, a light hug, as you do to people that, if I met you, I'm sure we'd like,
Yeah.
oh, tap each other's back. And, so I just did that to him. And then next thing he kind of, and I think it's only because he had his medication. He was called out. He got his medication. When he came back, he seemed like he was drunk, and he kind of leaned down and like licked my face and shoved his tongue in my mouth and dribbled. Just literally, loads of wet went all over. It was like a dog doing it. A dog just suddenly shoving their tongue in your mouth, and there was loads of wet went along with it. And I sort of, like that. It was something that probably a mental patient would do, nothing to write home about, nothing to make a big deal about, something that somebody seriously ill had done. And I had put myself in that position, was fairly good looking, still in my 20s at that point. And obviously he'd taken an opportunity. I didn't even feel any like sexual energy. I just think he did it because he was out of it. And I came out, but I started to feel quite shocked and disturbed, and had a therapist around that time and said, I feel pretty disassociated from it. And she said it's because he killed people. And I was like, right, yeah, I see that. And I started to feel almost like he put something in me, almost like I started having flash-ins of his crimes, and really horrific. I told Greg Miskew. He said, oh, we should make that a story. I said, I don't want it to be a story. And so I had heard about something called primal therapy in Los Angeles, where if you're neurotic, if you act out things. I thought maybe I was acting out. I blamed myself for it, and I thought, God, I must be really, sick to have let that happen. I wanted to get to the root of my sexual abuse by my father and pull it out, to not let myself be in that position, to be able to sustain a relationship with a man. I even thought, what am I, I got very bossed about like that book. And so I went winging out to Los Angeles to do primal therapy. Did primal therapy for about a year. And while I was out there, ran out of money. It's a highly expensive thing. John Lennon did it, and I got, so my bank account was literally at nil. There I was living with somebody, couldn't pay the rent, couldn't afford food. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do? And another detective called Colin Brooks said to me, oh, the Sunday Express will do a story on you on knowing Brady. So I got I said, well, I haven't got any letters from him with me. They're back in my briefcase in my car, parked on a side street. So Colin went and got the briefcase, got the stuff out of it, and gave it to the Sunday Express. I said to them, I've got nowhere to live. I'm penniless. So they put me up in the St. James Hotel on Sunset Boulevard, which is Rod Stewart's hotel. I ended up meeting Rod Stewart because he was in the bar every night. So they put me up in there, really nice place. And they sent a journalist called Brendan Bourne. It's actually one of my Facebook friends now. And Brendan Bourne was minding me. And we were sitting by the pool, and it was all very glamorous. They paid to have my hair done. They took pictures of me by the pool. And I was crying. And they said, Brendan said to me, why are you crying? I said, oh, no reason. I went on to the Saturday, and I knew the paper had gone to print already. And so I thought, it was safe. I could loosen up a bit with the journalist. And I was crying some more. And he goes, look, why are you crying all the time? And I said, well, I'm doing primal therapy. So I'm supposed to be crying. That's what it makes you do. I said, but something horrific happened when I met Brady. And he said, what? And I said, well, and I told him what had gone on. He goes, that's terrible. He said, that's like sexual abuse. And of course it's not. But I nodded and went, yeah, just to get sympathy from a guy I was having dinner with, and went to bed, felt better actually because I'd offloaded it onto somebody as well as, people doing the therapy and the therapist. And next day, got the newspaper, there it was on the front page. Brady sexually abused me in jail cell. Now, I never said he sexually abused me. And this is what his friend Alan keeps banging on, saying, oh, she lied. He didn't say. Well, no, of course he didn't sexually. I never said that. Anyway, they fought it in the High Court. And Brady said, he come out of all this stuff like, oh, I took her under my wing. What the hell? No, you told me to pose in bloody Playboy. And, he portrayed himself like, this really good person. And then what happened? It went to the High Court, and I didn't have any choice but to, I was in LA. I didn't really have any, I couldn't really stand up and say, that actually it wasn't sexual abuse. I was, in a different country. So they had it in the High Court. The judge won in favor of the Sunday Express. But Brady's lawyer ran out and told the waiting press, Brady had won, which still sits online, that, Brady had won. But the Independent, who that's what sits online, they had to say the next day an apology to the Sunday Express. Oh, we apologize. We reported it incorrectly. They won. So when I then sat down and wrote a book, which turned out to be Searching for Daddy, published by Hodder and Stoughton, about, the child abuse mostly in the book. And Brady tried to get it stopped, and he sent that cutting from the indie, and all Hodder and Stoughton lawyers, Mayor Brown did, was send back the next day where there was an apology and said, "Oh, back off, Brady. You know, we're gonna the book's gonna go out." So it went out, but they didn't want the story of what happened with him the last time. But I wanted it specifically because I almost felt like it dripped something inside me. Like I felt some kind of darkness, and the darkness made me hallucinate. Look, when I was drinking, drinking anything, it would turn into blood, and it was quite sinister. And obviously had therapy over that. Didn't really help. The Sunday Express paid me £5,000. They paid it straight to the institute. I carried on affording the therapy, and then finally came back. And when I came back, was literally I could barely walk. I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
Therapy is very aggressive, as well as the Brady hallucinations. I was on the floor and scored myself a bedsit. Don't know how, a little bit of my lips, scored myself a bedsit, had no job. And I rang Greg Miskew because he had been, quite nice to me. He knew the whole story of my life. I could be mad in front of him. I could meet him and be a bit flaky and he wouldn't judge me.
Yeah.
So I did. I met him and I was crying and saying I felt bad and, was having hallucinations. And he went, "Oh, we'll give you some work." And so that is how I ended up working for the News of the World. And people say, "Oh, you're a bad person. You work for the News of the World. Bad person, bad person." I literally, I could have stayed in the bed, hung myself or something like that. I literally didn't or they say things like, "Well, why didn't you work in Tesco?" I literally couldn't move. I didn't have a friend in the world. I knew a few people. Greg was one of them. And I literally fell on him like he was like, a family member. Help me, help me. I'm on the floor here. So he gave me bits and bobs of work. And, but bizarrely, I got myself stronger. I saw a really good therapist, Ron Dreyer. Saw him twice a week and got stronger in myself, but then got weaker because the News of the World started using me almost like I was an ex-hooker. They would send me out to get in cars with men that were rapists, so they could get a picture old blonde getting in the car with rapist. Yes, I did work with Mazza Mahmood twice. Once was to pretend to be his wife, where I was sent along. He took one look at me and said, "No, you look like a silly bitch. Go and put something else on." God. Then after we'd gone to watch Stallone's wedding, came back to the hotel room and he said, I said, "Can I have a drink?" Because I felt nervous and upset. And he said, "If you have sex with me, then you can have a drink." But and there was loads of people there too. "And if you don't have sex with me, then you can't have a drink." It just seems odd that I let him talk to me in that way. If someone talked to me like that now, I'd say, "Get me a drink," and I'd just tip it all over them,
Yeah.
But then, just weak, left, went back to my flat. And, and then the second occasion was when Mazza sent me up to go and knock on someone's door. They turned out to be gangsters who chased me with knives. And since then, I haven't been able to get on a tube. So that's why when people say, "You work with Mazza, you knew Mazza, you're Mazza's best buddy." That was my interaction with Mazza Mahmood when he totally, to this day, I still can't get on tubes. To this day, I have panic attacks. And then I couldn't work for the News of the World anymore. I couldn't work for them. Ended up, because I had health insurance, I ended up looking for a new therapist again. I was even more mashed up, and because I'd paid in to Bupa, I could afford the Priory, so I went in the Priory. And
just let's mention something, Christy, because there's little bits that you mention and it's just going right beyond where we can get the questions in. We've got to start getting some questions in here. Do you know the Mahmood business, right? Where this nonsense and all that, and I've seen that the absolute nonsense that has been spoken about. We know what I'm talking about. Some people might understand. We can't actually say any names. But you know what? For people who do that and come out with all these conspiracy theories and all this, the fact of what you've been through in your life and the way you have been treated in your life To go and do that, they're putting abuse on a person that is already abused by doing that. And it's just ridiculous. But I think most people can understand that this person that's making all these allegations, and I get these allegations, apparently I'm working with the bleeding queen and everything, but she better start writing me some checks because I want them if I'm working for her. But thankfully, we know that person has issues and they talk
But
nonsense.
it does make you ill. But I've learned through doing primal therapy, if someone gets you to a point where you're feeling a feeling, it's best to like feel it. You
Yeah,
know, I did feel bullied back then when those things were coming out that, oh, I'm, you know, is bum chum or whatever,
yeah.
you know, Mazza. And I felt bad. I felt, because I do have a strong sense of justice. And I felt, and it started to remind me of my brother. And it's odd. I got to my feelings of my brother and got them, you know, and got them out. But the Priory is a weird place. I saw a doctor there, Dr. Mark Collins, and he uses like a weird hypnosis. And I know
Mm,
the stars go to see him, Robbie Williams, and all them. It's already been in the press. They, you know, Kate Moss and Ruby Wax, and they, you know, they see him. And I at that time was working for other papers because they'd spread round. You know, I'm a good investigator.
mm,
I worked for the Mail, worked for the Sunday Mirror, and started hanging out with the journalists and you know, having girl nights, sit overs with some like Fiona Whitty and Tracy Chevron and their parties and Dave Dillon, and was pleased, you know, because I always felt a bit of an oddball, but I was like holding my own to a certain extent, mixing with them. And of course, I started being open about them about, oh, I'm going to the Priory every Wednesday. And when they found out, of course, they started bullying me. You know, once a
mm,
bully victim, always a bully victim, really. All of a sudden, I wasn't a friend anymore. I was somebody that had access to the Priory, and they started saying, oh, if you want to work for us, you've got to basically tell us if this one or that one is in the
mm,
Priory. And because I'm now what hacked off, I've had dealings of hacked off, and what hacked off don't realize, Graham Johnson, Graham was part of the Sunday Mirror crowd to a certain extent. He heard that gossip. Oh, Christine couldn't find out who's in the Priory. And so hacked off believe that I was spying in the Priory. But what they don't realize, I did have a modicum of rebelliousness that when I'm
mm,
bullied, I react in a certain way. Now, they were saying to me, you won't work for us anymore unless you spy in the Priory. So I thought, well, what can I do? I can either say, okay, and then be out on my ear. And I liked working for the press.
mm.
I was trying to morph into a journalist. I was doing my own little bits. I became interested in the IRA after going out to Belfast. I was trying to get work out there, which I eventually did for the Sunday Times, got my bylines in. So I was trying to make something of myself and get away from private detective stuff. And I thought, you're not going to screw it up for me before I get there. So I thought, I know, I'll just say the opposite of what is. So when they said, oh, like, is Liz Hurley in there right now? Did you see her when you went, you know, for your, because they knew I went in the canteen because they were my friends, and I'd
Yeah,
said, oh, I go to dinner there and I can hang out in the garden. And, you know, thinking that I'm just telling a story, they were seeing it as like, you know, oh, great, we've got access to somewhere where celebrities go. So they would say if someone is in there, and I would say the opposite. So if they said, you know, if I saw someone in there, I'd say, no, 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 they're not. And if I didn't, I'd say, yeah, 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 they are. And
mm,
it was probably stupid of me, but I mean, I didn't really know what to do at the time. I just thought, well, I'll get round it that way. They then started going from there that whenever a celebrity was pregnant or in a hospital, they would ask me to do it.
mm,
And or a celebrity was getting their boobs done, they would say, oh, you find out, you know, ask your doctor friend, because they knew that Mark Collins worked in other hospitals. So I was telling Mark Collins all this when I was going for it, and he was saying, oh, they really are scum and all this. So it's all
mm,
in my notes there with that. But now hacked off hacked off approached me in 2016. I wasn't working for anybody. The press, basically, after the phone hacking, a guy I know who's ex MI6, I'd introduced him. He brought in all this cybercrime. I think it was an MI6 job to crash the news of the world, but nobody writes that. Nick Davis certainly didn't put that in his book, even though we'd had meetings. So that all went on. Nobody mentioned John Boyle. He still lives in his mansion out in Peasmarsh. I was persona non grata. Boyle, to shut me up, had got me a job with an ex MI6 guy in Knightsbridge called Stuart Paul Robb of Knightsbridge Company Services, and I signed an NDA to not speak about them. It was fine. After I spoke to the Independent on Sunday, James Hanning, they both refused to speak to me ever again. And so I was persona non grata in 2016, even though I'd published by then. And I'd got my balance in the Sunday Times. I was the only journalist to interview the real IRA second in command. Still didn't have anything, press didn't want to use me. And where did I get to? What point did I get to? Sorry, 2016. Hacked off. They came to me and then said, would you get all your remittance advices? And I was very angry at the time over the Sun because they had just literally dropped me over Nick Parker harassing poor Heather Mills. And then he got in such a mess with what he'd done to Heather Mills, chucked me a mobile phone pay as you go and said, answer this when Heather Mills answers. So I had answered, and basically she said, oh, you work for the Sun, and I didn't say anything, but then she went on and on and on. And I didn't hang up on her because she was upset. Now, the Sun said to me, Rebecca Brooks said to Nick Davis, oh, tell Christine she can't work for us anymore because she was unprofessional. She hung on the phone with Heather. Well, she was upset. I'm not going to hang up on somebody. So I was quite angry at the Sun. And so when I met with Hacked Off, Hugh Grant's organization, Evan Harris and Graham Johnson, they said, we can get celebrities loads of money out of the Sun, out of the news of the world. If you say, basically, you spied at the Priory and you spied on people, whenever they had anything wrong with them, you could get their medical records. Now, I said to Graham, but I can't get GP's notes. That's impossible. But I said, I don't mind saying it, if it attacks the press. Fine, then tick me off for that. I didn't, care at the time. They were, I'd been, had to leave where I was living. They had got me a lovely riverside house. It was out in the country on the riverside in Raysbury, literally on the riverfront. So I thought, well, they were looking after me. I'll do whatever they want. I don't care. I hate the press. And next thing, I got burgled. Me and my son, he was only 13. We were living there all alone, right in the middle of nowhere. I can show you a picture of it. And beautiful wood-lined, like cabin place. I was burgled on the third night I was there. Now, they took all my tech, cameras, laptops, old computers, but I had jewelry, a gold bracelet and a Gucci watch on the dressing table as you leave my bedroom where the tech was, and they didn't pick that up. Plus the fact there was white carpets throughout, there wasn't even one footprint. I only knew they'd taken it when I went to go and use it. And the police are called CID, whatever. They said it was professional. I said to Hacked Off, if you nick my tech, they denied it. They said, oh, you should just maybe think yourself lucky you didn't get beaten up. You and your son didn't get attacked. I took that as a backhanded threat, never mind. And I stopped dealing with them. I thought, I don't like this. Fast forward to last summer, the lockdown, and my car decided to pack up completely. James Hanning, who wrote a book on Kim Philby, now it's been touted as really good in The Guardian, he said he wanted to write a book about my life. And so he said, to do this affidavit, to, swear it in and write about it. So I did that. It was about 70 pages. He met me. We met in a restaurant and he interviewed me. He was very interested in stuff I did when I was working for the press. There was, stories involving Cliff Richard, Elton John,
Mm.
Princess Diana, Princess Margaret. So I talked about all of them. He said, "This is amazing. This is a great story. And, would you mind a book?" And I said, "Well, if it's a book, I wouldn't mind my name on it. And would I get paid?" And basically, the answer was no on both counts. And so they got all this information, got the affidavit, and they had to put in the affidavit, it said I was asked to get people's medical records and then added, and then I had put in the affidavit, but I never did that because there's no way of doing it. How could I possibly do it? And then when I went to sign the affidavit, obviously I combed over it, reread it, and they had added, someone there had added, I was asked to do it, but I went ahead and did it anyway. And I thought, oh, come on. So I deleted out what they had put in and put back what was in. I'd never done that because I don't know how to do it. But then this year they started off with, and there's a whole load of celebrities to go, literally very long. Sienna Miller announced in The Guardian that I had access to her medical records. I had found out she was pregnant, accessed her medical records, and made her have a pregnancy termination because of it. And that was on the front page of The Guardian 2 weeks ago. And I went to the NUJ. Because I do keep payments up to stay in the union. It means you have a press pass. I don't want to give up my press pass ever, even though I'm not a journalist, haven't been for a long time. And I said to the union, Sam Waters, no, God, what is the guy's name? Waterston. How could I forget his name? It's not Sam Waterston. Jim Waterston from The Guardian. Now, I had rung him and said, "Why are you making up lies about me?" He didn't have the decency to call me back. This is how bullying The Guardian is. They're supposed to be soft and squishy and left wing and, "Oh, we're so nice."
Oh, yeah.
And he didn't even call me back. I said, "You've lied about me, mate." I sent him a letter. The letter was nasty. I said basically I was bullied to do that. Nick Davis and Chris Ferry from The Sun, they had believed that I could do that. They had said to me, "Oh, if you don't do that, we won't give you any of the other work." So I had basically, whenever they said, "Oh, is such and such pregnant," I would just use my intuition and think, "Are they?" And then say yes or no. And yeah, I suppose they did think I had some special way of finding out, but I didn't. And so the evidence that Sienna Miller said she had was merely Chris Ferro and Nick Ferro going, "Oh, Christine Hart said that Sienna Miller is pregnant." Now, yeah, I might have said, but I didn't get that from anywhere. So there actually isn't any proof. And yet Jim Waterstone wrote on the front page of The Guardian, "Oh, fully proven, and there's witnesses that she got her GP records." How is there witnesses that I got? I remember where I was parked up at the time. I was told Sienna Miller was pregnant, and I was told that she wasn't going to have it or something like that. And I remember being shocked because it was Jude Law's child, and I thought, who doesn't have Jude Law's child? And I was sitting in the car and I remember thinking, this sounds hot potato. And they gave me her friends as well to ring. They gave me Jude Law's number. I think I rang his number just to fucking talk about something else, to talk to Jude Law. But I thought, I am not even going to ring somebody and mention anything about it. It seems hot, hot, hot. And the Nick Parker is an idiot. And not being funny, Chris Ferrer is an idiot. All those journalists, they are stupid. From Phil Hall through. From Phil Hall sleeping. Phil Hall slept. He knew I was a story that was bullshit. He knew he'd lied, and yet he went on to sleep with me and to date with me. No, that's kind of stupid. And then, other journalists like Greg Miskew, he showed me various ways that he was like completely, he was very silly. And there's one thing that I found out about all that Fleet Street lot of every newspaper. They're very, very silly. They're very childish. They want to be James Bond. They are crazy. I would say every single journalist that I've ever met has got some form of autism or some form of crazy going on with them. And I'm not saying I'm not. That's probably why I fit it in. And was accepted by them when I wouldn't be accepted anywhere else, because it's like one great big mental hospital. And I judged that story on Sienna Miller not having Jude Law's chart as hot as anything. And I've been fully trained as a private detective. I work for ex-MI6 agencies, I work for ex-CID agencies, top level men who explain to me how everything works. There's no way that I would go anywhere near a story that I didn't even pick up the phone in it. And yet on the front page of The Guardian last week, I accessed Sienna Miller's GP notes. How would I do that? And wouldn't I, I said to Jim Watson, who wrote it, wouldn't I know all her business then? If she's got piles then or something like that, wouldn't I know all that? I said, she knows I don't know all that because I never went near. Who knows where her GP is even? And, what else does she say? Oh, there's witnesses to it and there's proof of it. Well, how can there be proof of it if I didn't do it? There can't be. And I did a little video on my YouTube and I got the Bible and I said, I swear, I said, Sienna, I was going to send it to agent. I don't know where you go to the doctor. And I certainly didn't look in your GP notes. I couldn't even look in my GP notes. I said, and I don't know anything about you and they're not witnesses. And I swear on my son dying, and he's all I've got in the world, I didn't go anywhere near your GP notes. I don't even know where they are or how to get hold of them. And I spoke to the union about it. David, I can't remember his second name, at the union. He said, nothing you can do about it. I said, what do you mean nothing? Can't you even say to this lying creep, this spoilt shit, I've been down to Dundalk, walking around on the floor with the commanders of the Real IRA. That was my journalism. What has he done? He's got his degree. He's gone to the left wing Guardian. He's sitting there in his office and he's writing about me saying I'm a scumbag. I'm a working class scumbag thief with no proof. There isn't proof because I didn't do it. And he can just get away with it. And I said to him in a letter, I said, I'm more of a journalist. I'm not a journalist, but I'm more of a journalist than you could ever be and you will ever be. And he, I would have no doubt, because he can get away with it, is going to go on with Hacked Off saying, Cliff Richard, Elton John, and Graham Johnson said to me, but we've got other people, journalists, that think you did that think you spied at the Pride, that think you did that. And so when we take it to court, if any celebrity has been written about, like, pregnant, we can say that it's probably you that did it. He said, and it's probable cause or something. And so it's quite funny. If it happened to someone else, I'd laugh. I'm just going to be shredded in The Guardian. Apparently I've been told, they said, oh, you'll get a rest over Christmas, Chris. Oh, to have my food bank Christmas. And that I live in a rented flat with mold everywhere. Apparently in the new year, it's going to start again, but with loads of them, like Cliff Richard and Elton John, saying I looked in their medical records and there's nothing I can do except just suck it. Sorry, I shouldn't lose my temper. I was so angry and it's so unfair.
I think what is, Christine, this is the problem with it. When you get into, and I've always said this, because it started off at the beginning of it with you saying, in the statement you were talking about, and you weren't committing yourself, but at the same time, you weren't, when you said, oh yeah, I'll do it, or whatever it was at the beginning. I always say to people, it's essential you watch exactly what you say, because you put one little flame of doubt in there. Actually, I'm having this at the moment with another person on YouTube who's not very pleased that I pointed out that, what he's saying doesn't add up. Once you get that little flame there, that's when it can grow into a huge burning fire. And that's the problem you have. I mean, no, it's too late for you now, but you have to literally say, no, or no comment. And that's it. And that's the only way to go.
But it's going to go big, I mean, Hanning is going to write the book about me. God knows what that will say. Is he going to be honest? I said to him, he rang me this morning. I said, James, are you going to be honest? Because you know what? I said, truth at the end of the day, it does have a way of worming its way out. And not being funny, when all this was going on, I was seeing Mark Collins at the Priory, and I was literally in my session. We didn't talk about anything else but that, and I was telling him what they would asking me to do, telling him that I was, lying to them, and telling them I was skirting around what they were saying to me to spy on patients in here and spy on him. And he never said to me, don't do it. We would sit there and talk about how stupid they were, basically. And that's all in my notes, that's in there. And I said to James Hanning, that is, he's almost like a witness, because he heard me say it. He's obviously a psychiatrist, so he can judge whether someone's telling the truth or not. So what if, he's called as a witness in court? But you see, there's a catch in this, because the Rebecca Brooks asked me to do it. Murdoch is paying out to cover her. So I'm the fool person that did these terrible, dirty things. Because if I went to court and say, look, I didn't do it, but I was asked to do it, then Rebecca looks bad, because I'm somebody saying I was asked to do it. So Murdoch is paying out to cover that. So they stay clean. And I'm dirty. I'm dirty from both sides. So I'm dirty from the hacked off side, and I'm dirty from the Murdoch side. So I just get squished like the perpetual victim. So I don't know if James Hanning is going to tell the truth. I said to him, but he is in payment from hacked off, but then he's a journalist with, he said to me he wants to interview Sienna Miller and get her side of what happened. She is blaming Rebecca Brooks for her deciding to not have the child. I said to James Hanning, really, when you have a pregnancy termination, it's very personal. It's not, you can't really say it's Rebecca Brooks' problem. I don't agree with their prurient interest in celebrities. I never had a interest in celebrities. I always found it kind of petty. I always wanted to be a proper journalist. It's not proper journalism, it's trading in gossip. And I always used to feel sick whenever they had any stuff about celebrities. Yeah. Celebrities gone in the Priory, and Jordan and Katie Price has gone in the Priory, and they used to get all excited, especially the guys, as if, and I remember Greg Miskew saying something about Meg Matthews, and he literally was breathless, and he was like, Meg Matthews, and I thought, whoa, what the hell? It's just like a good-looking woman. I mean, maybe it was that, but they really revere these celebrities. They're like, to these journalists, these celebrities are like gods, and they're like, we've got to find out what they're doing. And it's like, I found it really quite weaselly and really quite disgusting.
That's the bread and butter, isn't it, Christine? The celebrities, that's where they earn the living, because the people want it. The people always want the stuff on the celebrities that are going on. But
so I don't know the way forward. I mean, I'd welcome your advice. As a wise person, the way forward for me on, do I stay in my mold covered flat and get Jim Waterston to just pound me into the ground with every story that comes out? I said to him, is that what you're going to do? I said, you're going to push me. I said, and I'm at a point, I suffer from depression. My life's obviously turned out rubbish. I don't have, a partner. I've got sexual problems. I live here. I don't know how to earn a living. I do apply for jobs. They just get my CV ignored. And, I just live for my son. I get up every day. Look for work, obviously, and then I live for my son, but it's very hard. I said, how do you know, Jim, with one of your stories won't be one too much, and you might push me over the edge. I might not like being just scumbag every month with every celebrity that's going to come forward. And I know there's like there's so many of them. There's every celebrity that's ever been mentioned in those tabloids. I mean, I suppose some people might say, serves you right, you sad bitch. I mean, maybe it does, No,
it's not a matter of saving anyone, right? But the answer is never, and this will say, Christine, the answer is never ever easy, never pleasant when you're talking about anything to do with journalism or the entertainment industry or anything like that. It's literally a dog eat dog, and as I said, the vampires go in for it. And you see this a lot. And the only thing that can happen, and it's not, but I always say to people, I used to say this when I was working with the police as well, I say, I'll give you an answer, but it may not be the answer that you'd like, but I'll give you an answer as I see it. As I see it, the only thing that can be done is to you have to literally sit there and ride it, because you're not going to get, and you know this, you've been in the industry and you've seen it at its worst. You know, if you're looking to sort of get sympathy or get compassion of them, saying, you know, if you do go over the edge, that's not going to matter to them. That's not going to matter. At the end of the day, they deal, as journalists will see, they deal in stories, they deal in gossip, they deal in whatever. It doesn't matter to them. And that you have to literally ride it. That's the harsh thing about it, right through the storm. Because, and also this thing, because it's important to you and it's your whole world, and that's what it's viewed as, the wider world most probably will forget it very, very quickly. In other words,
I guess I'm thinking, Anne, that I'm applying for jobs, office jobs, whatever, and if they Google me, up it will come that I can do the impossible and read everyone's GP notes. I can't even read my own. I suppose that is what I worry about, because I worry about my son. He needs supporting. We've got no support from anywhere, so I worry about that. That is what I worry about, and that's what I said to Jim Waterstone in the letter. Yeah, it wasn't a very nice letter, but I said, I live for my son. I need to support my son, and you're going to stand in the way of that. I don't know which way to turn. I actually even considered doing black magic on him to stop him. But I know that's wrong. I don't want to do that. But I'm thinking, what else have I got? Spoke to the union. They said, oh, you can't do anything. Now, if I was a well-off person, I know they worry about what they write in the press about this one and that one. But apparently, if you're working class, haven't got any money, they can call you anything they want.
No, they can say what they want, because of the simple reason, isn't this is it? When you hear people even on social media going, I'm going to sue you, I'm going to have you for defamation. It's like, dream on. One, not only do you have to be extremely wealthy to bring a defamation case, whoever you're suing has to be wealthy, because if they're not wealthy, even if you win the case, you have to pay all the costs. So it's a rich man and rich woman's game, defamation. It's not something that can be just people just have to literally take it on the chin and say, well, this is going to happen. But I always look at it as this: it's on you, the information's on you, it's your world, and it's devastating to you. But outside, try to look at it outside, and people they won't be waking up thinking, oh, Christine Hart. And they won't be constantly thinking about it's because unless it's, and this nothing, these celebrities who are complaining, that actually keeps them in the press as well. That happens. It is. Do you know, like you watch the Real Housewives and all that, and they start kicking off? You can tell they've kicked off to get something that people will want to watch, and so that's how they do it. That's how the game plays out.
I wanted to write a personal letter to Sienna Miller and just, say, I don't know your private business. The first I just heard about it, when you weren't going to have the child. As far as I mean, they might have been ringing her to blackmail her. I mean, who knows? I mean, they were up to all sorts, and I do put myself in a position of danger, because I know when I was a witness for Wheating and I was giving them a 6-hour interview on everything that went on, they said to me when I'd finished, I thought I was giving a this is I am a bit naive sometimes. I thought I was giving them an off the record interview. So bizarre. And they were taping it, but I still thought it was off the record. And when they switched the tapes of thank you for that. Then they said, would you like to go into witness protection? I said, hang on a minute, this is an off the record interview. And they said, no, you're a witness now. And would you like to go into witness protection? I said, what? Against the news of the world? They're just a load of guys with like great hair, and I laughed. They're not like gangsters. And they looked at me. They gave me that look, that long staring doing that as if to say, aren't they gangsters? And I met the eye of the lead cop, and I said, hang on a minute, are you saying that they killed Sean Hoare? You know, Sean Hoare was a witness, ended up just keeled over, apparently. He was only 40. And I said, are you saying that the News International killed Sean Hoare? He just looked at me like that, and I went, bloody hell. So there is the risk that I would be better dead, because then they could carry on with their little fest, and you know, they don't look bad because they haven't requested anything, they haven't got a witness to say anything. I can be the dirty, horrible, spiderish person that did all these bad things, and oh, now the silly sad cow has decided to kill herself. So
No,
I thought of that. Is that the next thing, that I get Sean Hoard? And you know,
what is, Christine, you're in the middle of it at the moment, and he shouldn't have done that, whoever it was. Are the press going around killing people? I don't believe they are for 1 second. Or, you know, because if anything like that's going to happen, it's going to be happening to, on some other end, let's put it this way, some establishment or police end. I think what is, you're in that position at the moment that you're living in the heat of it, and you're starting to panic. Because I notice when, you know, we follow each other on Facebook, when you are going for, you know, you're looking for, you know, this solution, that solution, the spiritual solution. You're looking for the solutions. And do you remember when I don't know whether I said a while ago, I said, you know, it's like when people are saying, oh, you know, I've read this self-help book, it's brilliant. Then a few weeks later, oh, you want to read this self-help book, it's brilliant. Then a week later, oh, and this book is brilliant. As I say to them, look, none of them are brilliant, because if you've got a self-help book that works, or if you've got a faith that works, or whatever that works, you wouldn't be looking for the next book. And that's the truth about it. When you're searching for an answer outside yourself, the answer doesn't come. And this is what I say, the answer doesn't always come outside. It's not going to arrive on your desk in a book. The answer arrives with you. In other words, people look for control in their lives from outside. Sometimes you have to say, no, I'm going to take control, as hard as it is, and I'm going to control this. I'm not going to, you know, the best one I ever knew was when I was working for the Merseyside Police, and we used to get people who were suicidal. And a couple of times people came in, and I could see they were really locked into us. They couldn't get their mind out of it. And I read this book, and this is the only book I ever used to speak about, and that was The Power of Now by, what's his name, Eckhart Tolle. Now that I read, and I thought, this is very, very interesting. And when you're reading it first, you think, oh, you know, it's just saying the same thing again. But then you suddenly realize it's like a mantra. He's getting it into your brain. And what he says basically, and it's really, I mean, big news has been made out of it, but it's really what the Buddha was saying. Live for the present, live for the now. Don't worry about the future. And I used to say to the people when they come in, and I know they were in serious problem, but say, look, you're sitting in a police station, you're sitting opposite me, nothing can happen to you. Can we agree on that? And they go, yeah, nothing can happen to me. And I'd say to them, the past is the past. If you start thinking about the past, stop yourself thinking about it. You can't do anything about it. I said, as for the future, I said, when did you last predict the future and it came true in your life? And they'd be looking. They'd got no shake the head, no. I'd say, so you can't predict the future, so you're getting messed up. Now, the whole point of it is your brain, which Eckhart Tolle goes on about, and psychologists know, imagined fear. In other words, when you're imagining something will happen, that has exactly the same effect on your body as if it's happening to you there and there.
I do that so much.
Yeah. So it causes trauma. So the way to do it is to stop, and I'd say to your son, you have to get someone, I think you have to get someone else involved in it as well. And I used to say to people, because they'd have someone with them usually at the time, I'd say to them, if this person starts talking about the past, stop them and say, I'm not listening to you. I said, if they start talking about the future and worrying and panicking about the future, not listening to you, think now. Now, I got 2 WOW awards, which are like awards that you get off the police for that, because 2 people, literally, by telling them that simple rule of life, they came out of it. It sounds impossible, isn't it? You just say to yourself, when you're thinking about, will this happen? You say, no, 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 I'm here. You're either focusing on something or you make a noise. That's the one that I think is the best. You go like that when you start thinking of the future to bring you into the now. And you don't let your mind. It sounds impossible, but it actually works. And that's what you need to focus in on. But you need your son or someone around you to say, Mama, I'm not listening to that. What are we doing now? What are we having for dinner, Mama? Oh, look, Mama, that you've got a cobweb up there. I think you best clean it. And it sounds harsh, but it actually forces you, because you have to be strong. Because you know, Christine, the life you've led, you can only rely on yourself. No one's going to do it for you. They won't help you. It's a cruel, vicious thing. And once you get into that mindset, but you are in that process, as I see it, of looking, and it's led you, or could lead you, into situations which aren't very profitable, which we spoke about in private, about, certain people offering you deliverance.
I just to get into that. So what happened to get me, and thank you for that advice, that was brilliant, to get me into the truth movement. It was in 2016, and I was watching TV, and I saw a serial killer on there called Kenneth Bianchi, the Hillside Strangler, and he was talking about having an alter personality. And I noticed that Brady had alter personalities. And oddly, when I was investigating the Real IRA in Dundalk, the guy I got closest to, Liam Campbell, the officer commanding second in command Real IRA, who I did my interview on, he said that I'm 2 different people. So I was interested in all this alter stuff. And this serial killer, you can see him on YouTube, was saying that Steve did it. And this, basically, in one of the YouTubes, he stands up and says, you're the one who's trying to make me leave him. And that's a Steve character that carried out the murders. And he's basically confessing as Steve, I killed that person, I killed that one. And then he goes back into being Ken, who's like, very straight. And I noticed that with Brady, that he had a straight persona, like this guy, his friend who's written this book, Alan, believes. He sucked up this straight, goody two-shoes persona of Brady as being the real deal. But it's not, because I saw the other side of Brady that's just like a dribbling maniac, that, I'm in power now and I'm going to go to the dark side, and just like crazy. And Bianchi had the same thing, confessing to murders in a really nasty, horrible way. And I got in contact with one of the hypnotists that had seen him at the time. He sent me all his records, just email. Unfortunately, when they nicked my laptop, they got it. But his file when he was Steve. And it's so fascinating that people say, like Chris Berrydy, who I know we don't get on very well, according to Chris Berrydy, he put on that act. But once you read Steve character in depth, you can see he would have to be an actor and a writer and a director to keep it going for hour after hour in character. And he's actually got drawings where he's drawn pictures as Steve, and then drawn pictures as Ken, and they're totally different. And then there's a part where he's saying, the psychiatrist says to him, what's the name of your parents? And as Steve, he wrote down no parents. And as Ken, he writes down his adoptive parents. And again, like with Brady, Brady was, a foster child for all his life, and then got put back when he was 17 with his real mother. Bianchi was adopted, same as me, I was adopted. And I remember thinking, is this something that's gone on with them that's similar to me? And I always thought it was like the child abuse, the sexual abuse. Bianchi clearly had some kind of abuse. though he denies it. So I started writing to Bianchi, told him I was a writer and that I believe there was something about him linked with the alters that I had going on with me. And but I didn't know what it was. So eventually, then really straight away, as soon as I sent that about 2 letters, I got an invite to come and see him in America. And Chris Berryday was a bit upset because he literally only got 10 minutes with him standing up. He had to coerce him to get the visit. I have got an invite to have a sit down for 8 hours on 2 days consecutively. He said, "Oh, you shouldn't go. It's too far away, too expensive." I thought that I'd probably be able to get a newspaper to sponsor me. So I was helping Nick Davies with his book on the hacking at the time. He introduced me to Merope Mills of The Guardian, and she commissioned me based on 3,000 words I'd already written to go and see him. And so went to see him, sat down with him. To cut a long story short, I felt something really dark, and it was almost like non-human for a couple of seconds when I was with him. Really made me feel like fear, like I was paralyzed. It was really a weird feeling. Since then, I've come back and tried to look at that in various ways, and it definitely seems like a non-human being, like an insectoid kind of type of being. And so came back and I wrote a book on him called In for the Kill. Found a publisher. They again said, "Oh, we want Brady in that." So I added Brady in the front, added about the phone hacking. Published by Trans World. Didn't make any money out of it. Story of my life. It went out there. I did a lot of radio interviews because Brady at that point, I think he turned up in court for some reason. So they wanted someone who'd met him. So I did a lot of TV, a lot of radio, just talking about what he was like. Again, I know that put the nose joint out of his friend Alan, made him slag me off even more. She doesn't really know him. Sadly, I do know him. I've known him for a long period of time, most of my life, and I wish I hadn't. But I do know him. And so I was talking about him. And so I think that book would have sold, but apparently it didn't sell anything. I didn't get a penny for literally 3 years of working, digging into Bianchi. Bianchi was very angry. And I started to get really bad nightmares and really bad, again, similar to the Brady thing, like almost like hallucinations of seeing violence. When I prayed to Jesus, it vanished. So I think it's probably demonic with both of them. And the In for the Kill would come out. I was in a Facebook group, Fritz Springmeier. He talks about ET Greys, that kind of thing. I had always felt these abductions with these Greys. So I was fascinated by the Greys. So I was in this little group, didn't think anything of it. Started talking to a woman called Anna. Told her about my book, I think, or I'd been talking to someone else about it and she'd eavesdropped. Then she private messaged me, said, "Oh, I've read your book, In for the Kill." She said, "Did you know that you're an MK Ultra victim? Mind control." So I remember reading it and meeting a friend soon after for a walk. And I said, "Oh, some nutter has approached me on Facebook and saying that I'm mind controlled." And my friend said, "Oh, so what?" I said, I don't know. I just get a weird feeling about it. And she said, "What feeling?" I just said, God, it's so crazy. But why am I feeling that I'm going to be someone that is going to stand up and start talking about it? And I said, I don't want to be that person. I was already getting trolled under In for the Kill by a troll. And the troll kept saying, and he trolled me for years, this guy. And he was saying, "You didn't really meet the real IRA. You didn't really meet them." And I literally got the proof of the interview for the News of the World. But, you know, he was like, "Oh, yeah." And then he started, when he got bored of that, he moved on to, "Your parents were good people. I knew them." And just like trolling me everywhere. With that, your story isn't true. Your witness statement, you know, and putting you down. And I spoke to, so what happened? This woman kept on saying to me, I was a mind control victim. I just paired her off as a nutter, but she was like really sweet, really nice, American. I like Americans. She said to me, "Can I put you in a group for survivors of mind control?" I didn't want to say like, you know, get lost. I did feel like saying that, but I said, "Yeah, go for it." So she put me in this little group. And I was in the little group. I didn't bother going in there a lot, but then I started to go in there, got talked to a girl in there, Louise, and talking about our child abuse. And I said, when I try and access a lot of my memories, they're hidden by a screen. And she said, "What do you mean a screen?" Because I talked to, in the Priory, I talked to Dr. Mark Collins about the screen. And she said to me, "What does a screen have on it?" I said, "Oh, that's easy. It's Walt Disney, Donald Duck, and all like that kind of thing." And she said, "Just classic. It's classic mind control." And then I said to her, "Do you think?" Because my auntie, the nun, when I went to stay to become a nun in the convent, she took me down to Disney World. And she took us in there. I said, "Do you think there's any link with that?" And she was like more or less laughing at me and saying, "It's classic mind control. You're an MK Ultra slave." And she said, "I saw in your book, you know, you're basically sucked into the news of the world, and you know, you brought in the MI6 guy and you orchestrated its downfall." She said, "And then you went to spy on the real IRA. And, you know, on a certain show recently, it was an Irish guy saying I was known as a spy. I wasn't known as a spy down there. It's the outer edges of the IRA talked about me in that way because I was down there as a journalist. But because I got so close to Campbell, personally close, you know, they said, 'Oh, you're a spy.' But obviously he didn't think I was a spy, or others high up, because they would have killed me. It's very dangerous." But according to this woman, she said that I was a spy, but didn't realize I was a spy. She said it was my alter personality. Now, I thought it was quite odd because Campbell has said to me, "You're two different people." He said one of them is boring and just dull and miserable and depressed, which he's describing me now. I was talking to you because I am boring, miserable, and depressed. I'm that kind of character. I'm not much fun. And he said, "You've got another persona that's all up for sex with me and is exciting." He said, "That's the one I like." But that is the one that since I stopped working for Murdoch, I haven't seen it. I do recognize it as a part of me, but it's like it was like taken. I mean, it's just like gone.
I think what it is, Christine, we all have multiple personalities, and people make a lot of it, you know, especially when they go on about, what was that film you might remember? I can't remember was it Eve? The
Faces of
Sally
Eve. They
Field.
said that the Yankees saw that. Yeah.
And they quickly start saying that it wasn't true. What they were saying in there, it wasn't true. That was all made up. It wasn't actually that she was suffering from multiple personalities. But you see, the problem is, and this is when people diagnose, you know, "Oh, you're a victim of MK Ultra. You've got this, you've got that." They really do get on my nerves, because if you look at the outcome of it, does it help the person telling them that? No, it doesn't. I've never seen it helping them. Do they go on and live a full... See, there's a difference from someone, let's say, finding religion. You'll get people who say, "Well, I believe in Jesus," and suddenly they're at peace with themselves and they feel happy. But if someone say, no, this is what it is, it's all mind control. Now, MK Ultra, I used to scoff at that. I used to be like, no such thing. There's definitely evidence that there is something went on. There were experiments going on, and quite sickly involved children. It did. There is evidence to be seen out there. But the message seems to be that it was a total failure. It never worked. It never got what they wanted. So this idea of zombies walking around, or people walking around totally blissfully unaware, under the control, that is the thing that it might have happened in a couple of cases, but Sybil, why is someone Sybil? That's ringing a bell. Why is someone
Sybil was she. But I mean, I guess I agree with you. I thought, well, it's rubbish, but then reading Fritz Springmeier's book, getting to know Fritz as well. He came on
Yeah.
my little radio show. He said they use kids in Catholic kids, so specifically
Yeah.
Catholic. And then
So
I
there
thought,
was,
well,
yeah.
bloody hell. And then what happened in that group, there was a girl called Nina, and she kept appearing on chat shows. This is how I came into the truth community with Miles, a guy called Miles Johnson, who's linked with Kerry Cassidy. And she was busy talking about a mind control. And then I heard Miles Johnson, this guy called Miles, talk about super soldiers. And so listening to it, then next to her interview, there was one by James Casbolt. And bizarrely, James Casbolt told a story. He mentioned MI6, which of course I work for the ex-agencies. Then he mentioned Fleet Street, and I thought, well, that's odd. That's similar to my life. And then he said he grew up in a Catholic orphanage and was adopted at age 4. And I thought, well, hang on, I was adopted. But I've since thought about that. Now, searching for Daddy with all that in there went out all around England. It was a bestseller. So I don't know, did he read that book and kind of nick bits from my life? But then people assure me in the truth community that he didn't, that actually happened to him. I haven't been able to talk. Well, I wrote to him in prison. He wrote back to me, but his life is destroyed. It's completely, it's a mess. And he got involved with a girl very high above his station, very beautiful, the sort of girl that a guy from Cornwall on the dole shouldn't really have. So at the end of the day, he attacked her, ended up, with revenge porn of a horrible kind, ended up in prison for a long, long time. And now he can't go online or speak at all. Max Spears was another person that spoke about it. And he's dead now. And I met a man. Okay, next thing, this Anna woman starts talking about a man called Colonel Michael Aquino. Apparently, he was the man who invented these mind control programs.
Yeah.
So me as a curious person, I thought, oh, I'm going to track him down and write to him. So found his email online, wrote him a letter saying, oh, were you in London? Did you have anything to do with the Crusader Rescue? I want to interview you about these mind control programs. Are they real? Do they exist? Is it true? You're supposed to be the inventor, or somebody that, Joseph Mengele from World War II, supposed to be the inventor. And it was weird because when I was listening to James Casbolt talk, I was getting weird flashbacks of a life where Mengele was. I was a young boy, and Mengele was injecting needles into me. And then I eventually ended up working at Treblinka as just a worker in the camp. And this was like recurring. And I told all this to Aquino. He ignored me. Next thing, I had a really weird dream, which I've shared a lot online, where I was trying to get to sleep and I saw a white rabbit in front of me, like in my mind's eye. And I thought, that's really weird. And the only time I'd had a white rabbit dream before was when the Guardian first came to me and said, you worked for Murdoch for a long time. Will you be a whistleblower and speak out on the record? And I agreed to it. I said to Nick Davies, yes, I would. When he said, we'll come to the Guardian's office next day, we'll film you. So it was all set. I went home that night and I had that same dream. White rabbit appeared. What happened with the Aquino time? The white rabbit kind of shot off, and it was if a part of me kind of went after it, like really horizontal, like with speed, and then went downwards and hit the deck, like down, like through, I don't know what it was, like down a hole almost, I suppose you call it, a rabbit hole, and got to the bottom. Aquino said to me, what do you want out of life? Basically, I replied to him. He showed me a kind of a shape within a shape within a shape and said, get inside there. If you get inside there, your consciousness can go inside anyone throughout time. And I remember thinking of Henry VIII. And then I turned to him and said, isn't this like against Jesus? And as soon as I said the word Jesus, I found myself back on my bed. And with Murdoch, when the rabbit thing appeared, that took me into a dream where there were lots and lots of white rabbits all around me, like suffocating me. And I kind of got away from them and said, "Who are you?" And they all turned to me, these white rabbits in unison, and said, "Murdoch's army." And then the next day I rang Nick Davis and said, "I'm not going to go on the record against Murdoch." And he said, "Can I ask you why?" Because you're going to do it the following day. So a really, really weird white rabbit nightmare. I just, no, not going to do it. And so those are two occasions of white rabbit dreams. So I looked online. I found a guy called Douglas Dietrich. Supposedly knew a lot about the occult, black magic, had worked with Aquino. I told him my story, went on the radio show, and he said, "You're definitely a mind control victim." He said, "And it's controlled by ET, by Off-World." And I thought, this is a step too far. I've taken it on board, the mind control thing, but I can't take on board ET, controlled by ET. Come on now. And I thought, I'm definitely getting sucked into something. And so he said to me, "You should get a radio show with Revolution Radio." He introduced me, got me set up with a radio show. It's voluntary, never made any money out of it. Story of my life.
Can I just say something here, Christine? Right, that's the problem. You are always being used, and this is what you've got to realize. You never make the money. Do you know what I used to always say when I worked in the theatre, and you'd get asked, "Oh, we'd like you to do this. It will help the community," because they knew that my background was in theatre. "Could you do lighting? Could you teach some ballet?" I'd say, "Yeah." "How much?" And they'd go, "Oh, but we haven't got much money." I said, "Well, you can't afford the services of the next professional like me, because I tell you what, they'd be getting the wages, Christine. They'd be getting the wages. Always remember that before you do anything, get your paycheck, or you don't do it. That's it.
Still, James Hanning and Hacked Off want me to fess up all my old bank accounts. I said, "Well, can you pay some of my debts then that I've got?" And they're like, "No, we can't pay you." It's like, so they. Oh, I don't know. But anyway, going back to the Truther movement. So Douglas Dietrich got me this little radio show. So I was interviewing that when someone came to me, said, "Would you interview Brian Harvey?" I said, "Yeah, okay, set me up with him." They said he's talking about Hacked Off and how they were bad to him. And so, I got Brian on the radio show. He then mentioned, the red rooms. I thought that was interesting, but I never wanted to do a follow-up. But interestingly, a guy, Russell Stone, an Australian, who was hanging my shows for me, he said, "Oh, the red room stuff, so interesting. You've got to do a second interview about that. Truthers be really interested in that." That is why I did that, because he told me to. Basically, people pleaser again. And of course, now it's caused all the trouble. "Oh, you did that." But going back off that subject and back to the truther community, Douglas Dietrich started to tell me all this weird stuff about black magic. I found myself interviewing Miles Johnson, talking to Miles Johnson, telling him my story. He then said, "Oh, you were a mind control victim. It was started off in a previous life with Joseph Mengele. You've been used through, they use a certain bloodline." And then he went on to say, you're a super soldier. He announced it everywhere. I was a super soldier. And then I found myself in the middle of a really scary position. All of a sudden, even though the truth community is supposedly about ET, UFO, that's the only thing it's supposed to be about, and of course MK Ultra, suddenly I found myself in the middle of a witch's coven. Suddenly there was lots of women in the truther community who people were saying, "Oh, she's a witch, watch her, or you can't cross her, you'll get binded, you'll get this, you'll get that." I suddenly started to get loads of bad luck. I suddenly got warnings from people, and that everybody, I found out, was up to their balls deep in black magic, which made me then start to call on Eric Coetting on my show. I thought, well, okay, so let's find out what this is all about. Called him on the show, talked about protection if people are attacking you. And it was after I went on Sean Atwood's show. I think Sean interviewed Chris Berry D and about Bianchi. So I thought, well,
He's,
I've met Brady as well. So isn't that worthy of an interview? So I met Sean, found him nice. I found him in person. I thought he was very good looking. He's got very sort of sparkly skin and, bright eyes. He's on the YouTube. I don't think you can see he's very good looking, but
no,
then when
he's
you
very
meet him,
tall as well. Very tall.
yeah.
That's what
And
you
did you
don't
find
see.
he's got very good skin?
Oh God, this is it. When you look at me, I don't fancy him. He's not my type, and I don't want to disappoint him. I don't want to dash his hopes, but I don't fancy him, Christine. I don't. But he's got one for his age. When you think of it, I mean, I'm not much older than him. Only a few years old, and that's what's scary. He's got perfect skin down to
It's
his
perfect
chin.
skin. I thought he
He's
was
tall.
30.
Yeah, he's in his 50s, and yeah,
I couldn't believe that.
he's always well dressed as well.
Yeah,
But
and so he was. I went to his little shed, as you've been to, slipping around in the mud to get there, nowhere to pee. Anyway, so went there, and it was quite amusing. Well, not really. My ex took me in the car. This is how I think spirit jumps in sometimes. He had a pop at me through because we were an hour late. Went round and round in circles. He ended up shouting at me. I ended up running down an alleyway, hiding down an alleyway, and literally Sean found me crouched in a bush down his neighbor's alleyway. And I was in a right state because it'd just been really shouted at. And I went on there, quite nervous and quite sort of. So I did the interview, came back, and got to know Sean's cameraman, James.
yeah.
And when I was, I started to have like really bad dreams, really like lots of black magic that I felt was dark magic done on me. Started to try and learn it by, and then there was the Bianchi thing, the psychic attacks from him. So I thought it'd be wise. So I got to know Brian Barrett, J.S. Garrett, and all these magicians, and still am interviewing them on my YouTube channel about, how they do what they do and how to protect and whatever, still up in the air about it. But one point, James said to me that, he was going to introduce me to, he was going to introduce me to some people that would give me an exorcism, and that Callie Diamond had the exorcism and it would be good for me. And so I got this guy's number. The first guy was a black guy. I won't say his name. Man number 2 and man number 3. And they were both like priests in a way. One was actively a priest. The other one was like a priest. And he told me they were Christian magicians. And so basically...
Which is it? I don't know. I'm not really into all this stuff, right? But I was brought up a Catholic. I didn't keep to the faith, though. But isn't a magician and a Christian like a argument against itself? Doesn't the Bible say that that's a sin? Or I don't know. I thought it was.
Yeah, it does. I have a friend who, I do this sort of psychic stuff. My psychic stuff got polished up, and it's pretty. I would say it's pretty sharp. It's pretty good. But I have a friend that says to me, "Oh, you shouldn't do that kind of thing. You should do it. It's evil. It's against God." So actually, I'm in two minds, because I have the Catholic upbringing. I'm in the two minds. Is psychic and magician stuff evil? Does it leave you to a bad way? So I'm like hot between the two,
Well, I think what it is, someone that we both know, Angela Power Disney, she more or less, she sums it up. She's like of the mindset, you don't go into anything like that. You don't go into fortune telling, you don't go into magic or anything like that. Because it does. I mean, the Bible does. If you believe the Bible, it's strongly against it. But she'll admit that the temptation is there to look at your zodiac or your tarot card, that way. So it's enticing. That's the thing about it. But when it goes from enticing to what you're saying, where it's like, oh, I'm a magician, but I'm a Christian. It's like, no, there's something going on there that's not right. But sorry to interrupt there anyway, Christine.
Oh, thank you. I agree with her to a certain extent. I do agree. So I do medium work. I can channel, I can speak to people that crossed over. I put people in touch with dead relatives. And then, my ex, Paul, will say to me, "Oh, it's really evil. What about the medium of Endor? You're going to burn in hell." And so therefore, I won't do that anymore. So I do oscillate between the two, and still oscillate between the two. But so anyway, these guys, they, oh gosh, what do? They did a lot of blessing on me. I said a certain person I thought was attacking me in dreams. They said, oh, that person sold their soul to Paimon. They talked about Eric Coetin. They said they were praying against him and that he was in league with Azazel, and that basically they said Bianchi was controlled by Azazel. I'm not sure about all that.
What is an Azazel?
Oh, Azazel, it's a fallen angel.
Oh, I was going to say.
Yeah, I think Bianchi's controlled by those insectoid ETs that are probably taken over the planet, if you ask me. So that he said all this. I didn't go for it, but they did a lot of ceremonies over me, and one was where he took the blood and made a cross on my forehead, and it was weird because in a dream. That night, somebody came at me, one of those people from that community, and that I didn't like, was walking towards me and peered at my forehead and then just went backwards. It was strange. So they were very powerful. They told me what sigils to use. Pardon?
Christine, what blood? You said he put blood on you.
Oh, Christ's blood, I believe.
Well, what was that? Was it actual blood or what was it?
I don't know. It was done from a distance. So I don't know what blood he was playing with. And lots of singing over me and praying, and I have to say I did feel good after. I did feel better. I did feel better. And they said, basically that these people were doing this and doing that and doing black magic, and they were praying against Eric Coetin. Oddly, his channel is crashed now. They said they were going to try and take it down. It is down. And that was it, really. James asked me, would I speak about exorcisms on the Callie Diamond video? Apparently, the two guys that did the exorcism on me had done an exorcism on her, and that she'd done a video about it. And would I come on the video and talk about that? Which I did in the summer. I went with the cameraman to some woods in Richmond Park. It was so hot. I think it was a heat wave, and I did some filming about how I felt after it and my interaction with anything dark side, which was with the Bianchi thing. And because a friend of mine had said that the hallucinations I had around Bianchi's psychic attacks were with men beheaded in the desert, they seemed like Middle Eastern. So I tracked down Sheikh Ben Halama, who's supposedly an expert in jinn, and he came on the radio show and said that he thought I had a jinn inside me, and he basically said he cast it out. And then weirdly, I had a weird dream about him. He said in a dream, ask Allah to show you who's been doing black magic on you in a dream. And someone from the Truther community appeared in the dream. He appeared then beside me, and then said, you got to fight them, which I did. And then I was left in a desert area with the sheikh, and he said, there's a portal to the jinn. And so I walked through it. And then after that, I had a weird experience with these jinn-like entities coming for me. So it's a whole really weird world, all of that exorcism, black magic. And it kind of crosses over with the truth community in a little bit of a way.
Yeah, a hell of a lot it does. But at the end of the day, and this is a question I always ask, right? You always judge everything by the effect it's had, whether it works or not. Now, you've done that, you've had your exorcism, and for people who don't know, right, I've heard the details from Sean Atwood about what the Callie Diamond exorcism consists of, and it's not pleasant. It's not very pleasant at all. It wasn't just like hands-on. It's not pleasant at all, and I'm fuming because that is a woman who's on the spectrum. She might not be severely autistic, but she's high functional autistic, but she's still autistic. There's definitely been abuse somewhere in her life. We know that. Some things you can't believe with her, some things you can. But the fact is, and this is what I said, Christine, and I was fuming when Sean told me. I went mad when he told me. I said, basically what you're telling me is that these people are suggesting that someone with autism is possessed by devils. I said that's dangerous. And also, Christian, you've got to think of another one. If someone's been sexually abused when they were younger or even an adult, to give them an exorcism, I don't care what you say, that's going down the road that it could say that the problem of the abuse is with the victim because they were possessed. Do you see what I'm saying? It's putting the onus on them, and that's what I really don't like about it. But at the end of the day, if you want to see how successful somewhere it is your life better? Are you feeling better after all this? If you're not, it's a load of bunkum. And that's what annoys me. And that's what I said the other day. I don't know if you've seen it. I had an argument with Sean on Steve Wright's show. And I accused him outright. I said, you know, it wasn't nice for what he was doing, because I know he's with vulnerable women, shall I say. I didn't like all this. And that's the reason I don't like it, because it's getting people who are vulnerable. And you're in the class of vulnerable. You've been used all your life. You've been dumped on all your life. As you say, they've taken, you can be a people pleaser, and that's what they've abused you over. Even though you can be strong, and this is the thing about you, Christine, you can be very strong, but this people pleasing is the thing that takes over sometimes. And I think that's what makes you very vulnerable. You don't say no when you should. Now, to get someone and put them through this and say, oh, you're possessed and all this, and we're going to get rid of demons, which to me is pure, this is my personal view, it's pure medieval, and it's dangerous. And you usually find it's women that are the ones that they go after, not men. It's women. The effect can be absolutely devastating mentally on someone. So I say to people, before you venture into anything like that, say to yourself, well, what's the result going to be? Are you in a better place? If you're not in a better place, if your mental health isn't any better, it hasn't worked. It's all bunkum. And again, it's looking outside. It's not looking in to say, how do I solve this problem myself? Do you get what I mean? Or are we out?
Oh no, I do. I was a bit offended when the sheikh said I had a jinn, but then I just take it with a pinch of salt. Like, I was a bit offended when one of the black guys that I think they're friends with the John Wedger guy, so they're in a little group together. And I was a little offended when he said, you know, oh, you've obviously got something in you. But then, you know, you can look at it, and, you know, he said, oh, you know, you were attracted to Bianchi, weren't you? And I suppose there's a part of me that was attracted to Bianchi when I was writing to him, which I was honest about. I like to get these things out there. But then, you know, that's a man that's been in prison for all the years of time, and he's still like very strong, like he's a qualified lawyer and stuff like that, and, you know, an American. And I suppose, you know, but he said to me, oh, but it wasn't the man part that you were attracted to. You're attracted to Azazel, and, you know, you've got to get that evil out of you. So, you know, I don't mind looking at myself and thinking, you know, have I got that wrong with me? And, you know, my life hasn't turned out that great. Am I evil? I don't mind, you know, looking at that aspect and, you know, okay, get it out there. You know, will things get better? So I think, you know, but if you get somebody who's going to feel shitty about it after, and, you know, then yeah, it's probably might hurt them, you know. I did find those guys impressive. I do think they knew a lot about magic. They know a lot about protection sigils. Pardon?
This is what gets me, Christina. When this, I can't fathom this. I haven't, as I said, been brought up as a Roman Catholic, because my mama was a Roman Catholic. The idea of magic and all this is totally bizarre to me. In conjunction with Christianity, the two don't go together. I mean, and even when you're talking about jinn, really, the jinn is from the Quran. They talk about the jinn. Now, so the mixing, this is what they do. They mix and match. It's like, oh, let's take the jinn, but that's not a Christian concept, the jinn. That's a Muslim concept. So the mixing and matching up, both of those books are very strongly against any kind of intervention or speaking or trying to communicate or do magic with angels or whatever, or do magic. So the smashing it up, and it gets so confused. And then the end result of this, it just ends up to me in people are being led into a really, really dangerous place. And also another thing I remember, my mama said, don't know, we were talking about The Exorcist, the film, and she said, and I used to say to her, well, why don't the Catholic Church do? Because the Catholic Church now are very rare about doing exorcisms. They don't like doing them because they say, as they say, there's mental illness. We've got psychiatrists. They'll actually source it. Now, she used to say, if you do an exorcism on a person and they're not truly possessed, it can open the doorway that if anything is around, like say demonic, it can actually just jump in there. So people getting, and I don't believe in demonic possession. I don't believe in it one bit. I think it's just too medieval for my liking, but some people do believe in them. But if they do exist, going to an amateur or what sounds like to me, more like, not like a Christian, it sounds more like a pseudo witch doctor. That's what it sounds to me, doing exorcisms. It could literally, if there are such things, which I say I don't believe in, but there are such things as these evil spirits, guess what? It could open the doorway and say, right, just jump in there. So that's where I think you have to be careful.
Yeah, he was speaking in African a lot, so I didn't know what he was saying, you know. But yeah, I just found it interesting. And then he said he opened a sigil for me, a Mars sigil, and it would open good luck for me and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I suppose I found it interesting.
But has it opened good luck to you? It hasn't, has it?
No.
Actually, your card at Everton, was that afterwards or before it started breaking down and all
Afterwards.
This? See what I mean, Christine? Spot on, spot on. It doesn't work. It's all hocus pocus nonsense. It really, really is. I mean, there might be something. I do have a belief in there is a spiritual side to humanity. But I always say to myself, I can't define it or know what it is. And if we were meant to know what it is, we'd be born knowing what it is. We wouldn't all be having these hundreds, if not thousands, of religions on the planet if we were meant to know what it is. And I think you have to take the viewpoint. Guess what? We're in this life. It's not easy. Get through it. And then you'll find out the secret at the end. And that's what will happen. And if there's nothing there, guess what? You won't exist to worry about it. So either way, there's nothing to go by there. But I think people, and this is what I worried about you and why I kept on, because I used to go on your little post, didn't I, and say, Christine, and try to give a different perspective to it. I was thinking, I could tell you're going through a hell of a long time, a hell of a hard time, which you are, because again, your whole life from a very young age, you've been used, but it's been used in a public way and demeaned and put down. That's going to make you very, very vulnerable. And people just they go on to these passes with the cameraman, I say, which Sean is fully aware of what's going on there. It's just he's not thinking about you. He's thinking about my film. I can get a film out of this. I can get something to put out there to sell. Again, are you getting any money from that? No, you're not. And that's how I see it. You've got to start putting yourself first and saying, if anyone asks you to do this, do that, or I'll write a book, or we'll do this. Can we film you, Christine, doing this, that, and the other? Say, yeah. Tell you what, how much, and money in my hand before we actually start doing it. Then you'll find your life might be a hell of a lot easier to live. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it does. It does, I suppose, boil. Well, relationships with men haven't been great, but it does a lot boil down to money. Yeah. Not having money,
Money's God. Money is the God of the world, and people, that's it.
But then they do the trick. They do, you've been greedy, or are you not helping us? I mean, hacked off. They said, would you get all my old bank accounts, and so I have to approach, go to the bank, Barclays, write to them, get them. And I said, could you settle like a debt for me? And that's nothing. You know, all they've
Yeah,
got up for Sienna Miller, could they not pay a debt I've got for £2,000? But that, no, we can't do that. So I've got to do loads of stuff, and yet they can't do that one thing, what, to help me. I said, but you
exactly.
know what, if you don't want to say you're helping me, or you think someone will find out you've helped me, why not just see it that you're helping out my son? Do you know what I mean? But you know, no,
Exactly,
apparently
Christine.
no.
This is it. Get that. This is it. I said before, used to always get it. Oh, we need the lighting done with a community centre, or we're trying to help these poor, get theatrical training and all that. And I'd know damn well they'd be getting a paycheck at the end of the month. And I'd think, wait a minute, you're getting your paycheck, but you wanted to free. After my parents paid, well, my papa paid lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money to have me trained up to be a ballet dancer and put in the theatre in the first time. I did the blood and sweat and tears of this. And now you're expecting me to do for free. Give me some of your paycheck. That was always, and one thing I always say, and this is true, if you do something for nothing, you will always be in great demand. But guess what? You'll always be thought of as nothing for doing it for free. When you've got a price tag on you, people think you're worth it and think, oh, that's something special. Always remember that quality comes with a price tag on us. And people are so, it's a British thing, isn't it? Oh, I mustn't talk about money. Oh, I mustn't ask for money, because that looks like that you're a greedy person.
Greedy.
No, it's not. You're a very sensible person, and you'll get that the people who want to use you, who know that they have to pay for you, will respect you more for it, a hell of a lot more. So you don't do anything for free. You don't write one line of an article for anyone. You don't let them write a book for you unless you get it in a contract. How much is split this way, that way? And you certainly don't go letting strange little cameramen film you and say, here I'll film, so that they're hoping that they'll get a big hit out of this. God knows, is he looking for a hit? Is he looking for a hit in all the wrong places? But that's what you do. You put yourself first. And that's why I go on your little, I know on Facebook now and again, and I give you a little prod, and I'm prodding you, don't you, at times going, no, look at it different, Because I do worry about you. I think you have been totally used, and you're in this stage now where you need to sort of get down those roots, right into the earth, right into the ground, and look at you. And you're blessed as well in one way, Christine. Your son is such a blessing to you, and you can see that. Your son's always by your side, isn't he, when, anyone comes on the attack towards you and starts calling you. So that's what I'd say. Look at what you're blessed with as well, that you've got that.
Thank you. Yeah, he is. Yeah. It's what I live for, really.
That's it. Just concentrate on your son. That's all that matters, your son. And all that matters to your son is you. And I'd just say, because I don't want to tell people what to do, I don't want to tell you what to do or people what to do, because people will go down their own route. But my personal thing is, when you're talking about witch doctors or, these strange people and all this business, I think you have to be very, very careful with them and wonder, where is this actually taking me down? And am I being used here? And I think you definitely were used in that circumstance, as far as I'm concerned. You were, just to get a cheap film out there, which is not very nice. But I wonder if that film will ever see the light of day, because I say what I heard, I didn't see it, but I've heard it, what happened to Kelly Diamond in that video is absolutely scandalous. Even if she didn't have the high autism, oh God, yeah, scandalous. Even if she didn't have the high level autism, it would still be bad. It would be horrible. Whether it's faked or not, it sounds like a lot of it is fakery from what I was told went on. I thought, oh, come on. I said, that doesn't happen. And I can't go into it, But I said, there's no way that happened during her exorcism. But, oh, yeah, it didn't. Sean's like lapping all this up. But he's, critical thinking. He hasn't got critical thinking, that man. He hasn't got it at all. He likes to say the word, but he hasn't got. But anyway, we'll move on. I want you to start talking again. I've had enough. preaching
Oh
that now.
yeah, now I have to talk to my son. I have to go and collect him from somewhere. Um, yeah, I
But
have to
what
go.
we can do, I tell you what, Christian, your life is that, I say, full and that's eventful. We could do 2, 3 episodes of this over the next few weeks if you want to,
Yeah,
and really get out there, because your life is extremely interesting and people need to know. Because just in this now, we've been going on for nearly 3 hours
mm,
and you've had to rush through it literally
mm,
to fit it in, and we haven't even got to where you are now really, or the
mm.
full prospect of it. So would you be up for another talking session at some point where we can go into it more?
Yeah, sure, sure.
That'd
I
be
mean,
brilliant.
just for the listener, I'm not. Yeah, I'm just in abeyance, just waiting for the new year and the more bad
Yeah,
things in the Guardian. So I'm just, yeah, not knowing, just rabbit caught in headlights, not
yeah.
knowing what way to turn again, as usual. So, but
But
I think
you,
probably everyone's like that, with the COVID and stuff. Nobody
yeah.
knows what is going on. I did see a really interesting video the other day. Oh God, it's a doctor something something. He's got white hair, and they're talking about disclosure UFOs, ET, and it's quite a run of the mill video. But then it goes into people that have experienced abductions and stuff like that. And then it was talking about the different ET. Talked about the greys. The lizard faced ones, and then it talked about these insectoid ones that,
Oh, I know. It just grows and grows, doesn't it? There's going to be elf ones next. There's going to be ones with twinkly little tails that make them like that fox, isn't it? Out of hedgehog, its tail
but
spins
but
up.
it's just fascinating, and it was so scary because he said at the end of it that these are the ones that want us dead, and then it appeared on the screen a big insectoid,
Yeah.
and I don't
Do
know,
you
it
know
just feels. Pardon?
the modern day fairies? That's what it is.
You
It's
think
just
that
modern day
you should
fairies.
watch Colony. Watch Colony
Yeah.
on Netflix. Change your
Yeah.
mind. I just think there's been some kind of alien takeover right now. It just feels like there's something weird going on, something that reminds me a bit of World War II. That kind of, I don't know. I
Do you
mean,
remember though, Christine? This is it. Do you remember World War? But do you remember that? What
no.
question to say? Do you remember World War One? My God, no. What I meant with, if we think back to World War One, right? That's when the huge boom in interest in spiritualism and seances happened. That's when it happened, and then because there wasn't the concept of aliens or UFOs or anything like that, they had to come up with a new thing, and the new thing was fairies, and that was the big, oh, there's fairies,
Hmm.
Arthur Conan Doyle and all that, and the Cottonley fairies started that big trend. Now, what it seems to be is that, to me, this is my personal view, these aliens are the new fairies, the new gods, the new angels. And this is like, man's always got to have a mystery. And you usually find it just split into two. Women, on the whole, females, it's angels with them. Oh, me angels and all this. They believe in angels are helping them and all this. Men seem to be more preoccupied with the aliens and the abductions. To me, the reason why that split is there is little girls like the fairies and the wings and pretty things. So the natural progression is to go to an angel, which has got wings. And actually, if you read the Bible, and that's true, they're absolutely terrifying looking things with 4 faces and eyes everywhere. Then you wouldn't want to bump into one, let's put it that way. But yet, with men, it seems to be these aliens and spaceships, because they're all Action Man and Space 1999 and Star Wars, and you see the division there. So to me, what it is this is my personal view. It's just people taking the childhood interests and fancies and projecting it onto a modern age. But that's just my personal view. I'm not saying that people who believe in it are strange or anything like that. I mean, who at the end of the day, this world is a very mysterious place, and so is the universe. Can you be surprised by anything? No, you can't be. That's it. Never put your cards down on the table and say that's exactly where I am, because you don't know, do you? None of us know for sure, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I fully believe in ET. I fully believe in the insectoid ones. I fully believe in the Fae too, the Tuatha De Danann. But you know, I mean, I suppose in time, I just think the next thing is going to be more disclosure, and that they will start bringing forward these alien beings, and we're going to have to. I just think they do it really well on that Colony. It's a Netflix series that
Mm.
there's a takeover. They're all on lockdown. They start having drones to see them on the street. I think what's happening in Austria is absolutely terrifying, and they've showed now the fine they're going to get is something like £3,000 per quarter. I
Austria
mean,
or do you mean Austria or Australia?
Austria,
Austria, oh, is it? Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Go. There is, look, there is. Do you know what I think it could be as well? This is just my personal view about all this. And you could, in a way, it's not unusual that's happened. There's just that many people on the planet. Look, when I was born in the 60s, mid 60s, there were 3 billion, just over 3 billion people on this planet. In the years I've been on this planet, which is just short of 60 years, it's tripled to over 9 billion. It will double that in much less time than I've experienced it tripling. There's too many people on the planet and they've got to get us under control, or there's going to be absolutely mayhem will break loose. There's going to be wars, there's going to be shortages of food. We know that there's a catastrophe going to come. So they've got to get us into
And
the
cull
position of
us.
control.
Cull
Well,
us. Do you think they're culling? I think they're culling.
I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't know what's going on. I think what is, see, the problem is, and because of modern science, the keeping people on in the past, nature would decide. People died around the age of the late 30s, early 40s. But even when I was in the 70s growing up, to hear someone saying great grandmother or great grandfather was rare. They were dead. You were lucky if you had your grandparents alive because people died. Now people want to live on. So medical science is allowed to happen, but at the same time, they're not stopping having the babies. And the babies in the past, as we know, left up to nature. The mortality rate of babies was huge. Very few got past infancy. Now we're all living. Something's got to give. So is this control a bad thing? It might be the only thing that might save us because the simple matter, too many people on the planet, and the planet can't stretch, it can't go, its resources can't go any bigger. I think we're in very, very dangerous times, and I think the governments of the world now are thinking, oh my God, they've acted too late, but we've got to get a handle on this. We've got to get a real handle on this. My personal view is, we've gone right against what nature intended. And that's because, wasn't it Rich? Who was that one in the wheelchair? I've forgotten his name. That scientist that was in the
Oh,
wheelchair.
Stephen Hawkins.
Stephen Hawkins. He said something amazing, didn't he? He said, intelligence, too much intelligence will lead to total extinction of a species because you get too successful. And he said about alien life, he said most probably went out to the planets, every planet that had intelligent alien life, by the time we get to it, it will be extinct because their own intelligence would have made them we're too successful. So I think maybe what it might be is that the governments, and is it a bad thing? Well, if we're going towards the stage of total disaster, they have to control us, or there's going to be absolute anarchy going on. Are they controlling us in the right way? I don't think so. They've acted way, way too late. They should have started this in the 70s. Of where do we go from here? The planet's not going to be able to sustain life as we know it if it carries on. But that's just my personal little view, because I always say to Christine, I'm glad that I'm the age that I am, because I'm closer to the grave than what I am to the cradle. I wouldn't want to be young now going towards what the future might be holding, because you can see we're at the point where it's going to get serious. I might see it starting and it getting to its bad point, but something's got to give. And if we can have as many jabs as we want to save us. I think the planet, if you believe in this Gaia thing as being its own source of pseudo-intelligence, it's going to say, well, get what? You get lost, you're going, and this is nothing. They say the end of the world when they're talking about the end of humankind. No, we can disappear tomorrow, and guess what? The Earth will carry on, and a new species will spring up to most probably take over. And then they'll get too successful, then guess what? It will be like, oh, don't bother with your eagles. We're still, you know what I'm saying? It will find its own way, but it is scary. It's very, very scary, I think. That's my preach on the subject anyway.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, I do think it's been an alien takeover. Just from what I feel, just feeling that. Just feeling, but we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. I mean, I don't want to take the what. Just because I know
Yeah.
about hosting and that kind of thing, and I don't know, I'm suspicious of it. And what is it for, really? I mean, I don't know. I'm going to upset lots of people now for saying that, but it's I just
Well,
we
the
don't
thing
really
that,
know what's in it, do we?
well, we told the thing that made me get it, and I wasn't going to get it, not on anything. It's just that I thought, oh, I don't like this idea. It just came out of the blue, and I thought, we don't know. As you say, it's confusing. But the reason I went from there was my neighbour. I was taking my dog for a walk, and I've known her since I was a little kid. It was horrible. And to cut it short, I saw her at a doorstep, and she didn't look well. And she said, "Oh my God, we can't mention the name. We've got the thing, the virus, me and her husband." And I said, "Oh God," I said, "I hope you get over it." So I walked away. 2 days later, ambulance there. I thought, "Oh God, one of them must have taken a bad turn." So never thought that nothing. Next thing, another neighbour of mine called and said, "Do you know such a person? She was taken into hospital. She's dead because of." And I said, "You were kidding me." I said, "I've only seen her 2 days," but God, I was devastated, Christine. It just came as a blow to my stomach. I remember sitting on this woman's lap as a little child, and it bounced me up and down when she was a teenager on her lap. God, it was horrible. And that's when I thought, wait a minute. I thought, it wasn't so much for me. I thought, what if and it wasn't like, I know they say the flu and all this, it was nothing like the flu. And I thought, no, wait a minute, what if I pass this on to someone else? If I catch it, I don't give a damn about myself. So that's why I got it. I thought, no, I'm not going to take the chance. But I don't think people personally should be forced. I think it's up to the individual to decide what they do. But
I think as well with the we know now about taking extra vitamin C, a hell load of vitamin D. I don't think anybody ever bothered with vitamin D. I take 10,000 IU now, vitamin D religiously, and zinc as well. Zinc is, I think it's a lifesaver. I think you've got to get it down you.
But we have to be very, very careful with this one, Christine, because the thing is, there has been a situation recently where a woman has passed away, and she was part of this group that was going on about, and I'm sorry, I'm getting rid of that one, Blue Nomad. You can't do it, mate. You can't go giving alternative therapies on here. Sorry, you can't do it. Oh no, I'm trying to delete. Look, to Blue Nomad, I'm not deleting you. I'm just putting you in timeout or blocking you. It just doesn't give me the option, or I'm not getting the option to just delete your comment. You have to be very careful, especially on social media, talking about alternatives to it, because you'll get the whole interview blocked and they won't allow it to go through.
Oh yeah. I just to keep us healthy. Keep us healthy.
Yeah, keep us healthy. But there was a woman who recently has died, and she was into this. That she was following a group, and I wish I could find it. It was on me. Someone sent me it on my Twitter because I said, "Oh, go away." And this fellow was actually blaming the NHS for some reason because they wouldn't give alternatives. And then he found out he was a paramedic and had robbed someone when he was a paramedic, one of the patients, out of money. And I thought, oh my God. So we just have to be very careful. But Blue Nomad, nothing personal there. It's just, be very, very careful because you can get in trouble on YouTube for saying things like that. So you have to be careful. But I just thought I'd point that out. So anyway, Chris, it's been lovely talking to you. Do you want to say anything finally? And then we're going to, you're going to definitely come on again because this is fascinating.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, somebody asked on my channel was, I mean, I keep changing the name. I think at the moment it's under Chris Joe Hart. I think you can find it there.
That down,
or it might be under Chris Joe Hart, Angel Whisperer. I just like that. Let me see what it's called right now. It's just called Chris Joe Hart right now. So there's a little picture of an angel. It might have psychic spiritual on there as well. And it starts off with an interview. Joseph Mengele explored with Fritz Springmeier. So that's about MK Ultra. If anybody's like really interested in that aspect of things.
Oh, brilliant. So anyway, Christine, I've really, really enjoyed this. You're a fascinating person. If you take nothing away from this, all the comments we've had have been positive about, and people are definitely on your side. You're a fascinating person, fascinating, and I'm definitely going to have you on again to talk about this. So I'm going to say to everyone, thank you for joining in. Go and I will put a link to Christine's channel in the comments. Been absolutely fantastic. And so thank you for that, Christine. And all
thank you, Anne, for having me on. Thank you very much.
Don't forget, I'm always on Facebook. I'm always on Facebook if you ever want a little chat. So take care, darling. Okay. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Anne. Bye.
Bye.